It'll be simple. It's simple. I've already given the...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the March 26, 2018 regular meeting of the DeKalb City Council. Prior to the beginning of our going through a rather lengthy agenda tonight, I would like to ask any folks who would like to speak to any of the items on the agenda to fill out a speaker request form. Those are in the back room there in the entryway, and give those to City Clerk Sue Herman. I have a number of folks already who have filled those out. Also, there will be an item on the agenda for public participation for any items that are not listed on the agenda tonight. So having said that, roll call.
Jacobson? Fanouken?
Here.
Marquardt?
Here.
Fagan?
Here.
Noriko? Here. Verbeck?
Here.
Favor?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. I'd ask our police officer on duty tonight, Joseph Gordon, to come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Joe?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Officer Gordon. Now to approval of the agenda. Any additions or deletions from tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Jacobson? Fanouken?
Yes.
Marquardt?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
7 yes.
There are no public hearings scheduled for inclusion into tonight's city council meeting. We move now to item E on your agenda, special items or presentations and citizens' comments. Special items, A, proudly DeKalb. There is nothing scheduled for this evening. I do have a couple of proclamations that I would like to read. I won't read the entire proclamation, but I will try to synthesize what they include. The first one is a proclamation for Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. I, Jerry Smith, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby proclaim April 2018 as Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month in the City of DeKalb. I support child abuse and neglect prevention efforts and education, and I encourage all citizens to actively help protect our children and work to create strong families within this community. I'd like to ask Jill Olson, who is the Executive Director of the Court-Appointed Special Advocates, CASA, to please come forward and accept this copy of this mayoral proclamation. Thank you. Would you like to make a few comments?
Thank you to the mayor and council for this proclamation. As we all know, the front line for prevention of child abuse and neglect is right here. It's those of us in this room, it's those of us in our communities. And we certainly appreciate the acknowledgement that April is Nationally Prevent Child Abuse and Neglect Month. And we highlight a number of agencies and organizations here in DeKalb County, in addition to CASA, such places as Safe Passage, Hope Haven, Youth Services Bureau, and so forth. There are many agencies here who work directly or indirectly with children who have been abused or neglected, and with families who are struggling with issues such as drug abuse and domestic violence that leads to things involving child abuse and neglect. So again, thank you for your acknowledgement, and thank you to all who believe that putting the needs of abused and neglected children first and foremost in our minds is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. We have one more proclamation this evening. That is for Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month. I, Jerry Smith, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2018 as Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month throughout the City of DeKalb, and encourage all citizens to work together to raise awareness and understanding of this debilitating disease. We will see that this is presented to local representatives representing the fight against Parkinson's disease. Our next item on the agenda, item D, Annie Glidden North Revitalization Plan Task Force Update. As many of you know, our two aldermen, Bill Fanouken from their 2nd Ward and Dave Jacobson, our alderman from the 1st Ward, are the council liaisons for what is turning out to be, I think, a quite successful Annie Glidden North Revitalization Plan. And who's going to speak to that tonight?
I will again.
Alderman Fanouken?
Yep, I'd like to report that the subcommittees have continued to meet. We're waiting for the setting of the date for the next full task force meeting. That should occur sometime in the month of April. I do know that one of the topics of discussion of at least a couple of the subcommittees has been the building we purchased out in Greek Row and what should become of it. So I think what will happen there is that after the subcommittees continue some discussion, it'll go to the full task force, and we'll look for a recommendation out of there. So, thank you.
Thank you. I have one speaker request form showing that Liz Hoppenworth, you want to speak to the Annie Glidden North, or you want to speak to the parking? Yes. Yeah, parking, okay. I read your mind, Liz, see, so we'll wait until we get to that item on the agenda. Thank you, Bill and Dave, for this report. There are no special presentations tonight other than the couple that we had earlier. I'd like to ask for a approval of the mayor's appointments. I have one appointment to make, and that is the appointment of Sharon Blake to the DeKalb Public Library Board for the completion of a 3-year term through June 30th, 2018. We had one resignation from that board. This is simply filling the unexpired term of the other individual, Tanisha Blake, and Sharon is a 40-year resident of DeKalb. She and her husband have attended library over the years, raising their kids. They went to the library. She's got a great background, and she's presently a teacher at Clinton Rosette. Is Sharon here? I didn't think so. Okay. So I would ask for a motion to approve that mayoral appointment.
Motion, Mayor.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on Sharon's appointment? Roll call.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay, now we get to the part on our agenda, number 4, public participation. This is basically geared for folks who would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda. So if there is something on our agenda tonight, we would ask that you kindly wait until that area, a part of the agenda. But I do have one person, that's Kay Shelton, who wants to speak on an item not on the agenda. Kate?
On April 26th, the documentary All the Queen's Horses about the massive $53 million theft of Dixon's taxpayer dollars by Rita Credwell will be shown at the Egyptian Theater. I first saw it in Dixon with Rita's victims. It should be part of the training for any elected official in Illinois. This is an awesome documentary. It's eye-opening. I sat there with my jaw open, and I knew Dixon very well. I knew the mayor. I wrote his obituary for a magazine. He had no idea what was going on. Auditing the books is not sufficient. That's the biggest takeaway from this documentary. The producer of the documentary, who is an accounting professor specializing in fraud, said, quote, "An audit is like hiring a food critic," unquote. It's not going to detect fraud. So this is going to be a very good documentary. If you've got the time, show up on April 26th. I would even tolerate the mayor letting employees go and sleeping in an hour the next morning to go see this documentary. I never say that. On Friday, I brought a friend from Chicago and my parents from Indianapolis out for Brian Regan at the Egyptian Theater. My zip code purchased the tickets, but that involved folks from far outside the zip code spending money. That was fine until my father, however, went bonkers when he saw the 10% restaurant tax on his bill. On behalf of him, in a rhetorical question, he wants to know, quote, "What is wrong with this city?" unquote. Why is the tax 10%? So you're bringing folks out, but some of them aren't too happy about the taxes that they pay when they are here. And I don't know if I can stay here another 2 hours to get to the parking thing, so I don't know how long that's going to take. So I'm going to say something now. I don't wish immediate towing on anyone, especially someone who lives paycheck to paycheck. Getting a car towed costs hundreds of dollars. The tow companies are not anywhere near the Husky bus line. If any of the students mess up and can't understand the signs and they park in the wrong place, that's going to be very costly. Instead, I would recommend you ticket instead of immediate towing. That seems pretty harsh. Once you put up signs and tell people you need a parking permit to park here, you're going to get rid of most of the people parking there anyway. Immediate towing just sounds very, very harsh. And if you ticket, you're going to know exactly whose car is in the wrong place at the wrong time, but without causing an expensive bill for somebody to go get their car from towing just because they messed up on reading the signs. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Okay, moving forward to the consent agenda, again, for the benefit of our audience and for those watching on TV at home. All items listed on the consent agenda are enacted by one motion. There's no separate discussion of these items unless requested by a council member, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda. I'd like to read those items, and then we'll see if there's any, when we'll vote on the consent agenda. Number 1, approval of city council minutes. A, minutes of the special committee of the whole meeting of February 20, 2018. B, minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of February 26, 2018. C, minutes of the city council meeting of February 26, 2018. Number 2, receive and file accounts payable and payroll through March 26, 2018 in the amount of $2,235,880.60. B, investment and bank balance summary through January 2018. C, year-to-date revenues and expenditures for the general fund and water fund through December 2017. Number 3, resolution 2018-032, approving the regulation of traffic for the purpose of holding the annual DeKalb Corn Festival on Illinois Route 38 between 1st and 4th Street, beginning on Thursday, August 23, 2018, at 4 p.m. through Sunday, August 26, 2018, at 10 p.m. Number 4, Resolution 2018-033, authorizing the execution of a lease agreement for the Resident Officer Program House. Number 5, Resolution 2018-034, authorizing an agreement with the state of Illinois for a cooperative purchase of 3,500 tons of road salt for the 2018-2019 snow season in an amount not to exceed $220,000. And Resolution 2018-041, authorizing execution of an agreement for resignation for the city manager. Are there any additions or deletions requested from the consent agenda? Alderman Fanouken.
Jerry, I'd like to have item F3 removed and voted on and talked about separately, please.
That's the resolution on the DeKalb Corn Fest.
Yes, sir.
So we'll move that to the number 1 item under items for separate action.
Thank you,
And then
sir.
we'll move everything else down. Any other additions? I'd ask for a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay, let's go to items for separate action, and we will then start with the resolution 2018-032, approving the regulation of traffic for the purpose of holding the annual DeKalb Corn Festival on Illinois Route 38 between First Street and Fourth Street, beginning on Thursday, August 23, 2018 at 4 p.m. through Sunday, August 26, 2018 at 10 p.m. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Alderman
The
Fanouken.
reason I asked for it to be removed from consent is over the last couple of years, parking enclosure on Lincoln Highway is not supposed to start till 4 o'clock. But the Corn Fest folks have started closing the parking areas much earlier, precluding repairs getting in, customers getting into their stores. And it's just something that I'd like to make very clear, that that's when it's supposed to close, is 4 o'clock. Now, I know, Tim, there's some things you need to do in terms of the generators, and that's a little different than closing off the parking by Cornfest, and I just wanted to make that very clear. So that was my reaction there. And then I do have a couple of questions. What's going to be the impact of the tollway detour, and what if the state of Illinois, because of that tollway detour, says we can't close Lincoln Highway? What happens?
What happens to the detour of the detour?
Well, I know what the detour is set up typically for downtown DeKalb for this, but what happens if IDOT says you can't do that because of the detour of the tollway traffic through downtown DeKalb?
So we put this together. We want to get it to them as soon as possible, obviously, to find out whether that will be an issue. Hopefully, I was hoping to get this through and kind of approved with a little discussion, but we will certainly wait for their response and follow up if we don't hear quickly so that we can figure out what needs to be done. So the 88 traffic is being detoured. Obviously, they get to this point, then they would be detoured around that. So it would be, assumably a heavier load in those timeframes, but we will certainly watch for IDOT's response and be prepared to follow up if necessary.
Right.
Public Works Director Tim Holdeman, do you have any additional comments on that?
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Fanouken, we have been in contact with the tollway, and from early on, we identified this as a weekend that we would like to have the detour not in effect. If you recall, the staging is April through August for the Annie Glidden, and then moving August to September to Peace Road. So we believe and are working with the tollway to get that one particular weekend with no detour, so that we won't have the detour, we won't have that problem. And we're working with the tollway to make that happen.
All right. Thanks, Tim. And it's just, I thought it was particularly important that it at least be brought up and aired publicly. Thank you.
Absolutely.
No, that's great. I mean, I think that just shows that if we have a consent agenda, if any of the aldermen want something removed, we did. Bill, good job. Okay, now we move on to,
We need to vote.
oh yeah, we need to vote on that. It's been moved and seconded.
Yes.
Roll call.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay. Alderman Fagan is recusing himself from this particular discussion, and that is what is listed on the agenda that you folks have as number 1, items for separate action. Ordinance 2018-010, amending the fiscal year-end December 31, 2018, FY 2018 budget. This is the second reading of this ordinance. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Jason Mitchnick, our Economic Development Planner, will address this issue. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Before you this evening, as the Mayor mentioned, is the second reading of the budget amendment that is directly tied to the incentive for 230 East Lincoln Highway. At last council meeting, the city did approve an amendment to that agreement, which increased the incentive from $400,000 to $468,282. Also required in order to pay out that incentive to the Bandits Castle LLC does require an amendment to the 2018 budget. This was originally projected to be paid out of 2017's fiscal year, but due to the timing and delays in that project, it is going to impact the 2018 budget. I would also like to bring up that this budget amendment does require a supermajority vote of at least 6 votes in the affirmative. We did have, I think, some confusion with the impact of what the city would be able to do if this is not approved, if the budget amendment is not approved. It does not solely impact the additional incentive that was approved by resolution, but would impact the incentive as a whole. So no incentive would be able to be paid out if the budget amendment is not approved. At this time, I'd entertain any questions the council has, or defer to Attorney Frieders if he has any additional comments.
I think we probably took quite a bit of time last time on voting on this, but does anybody have any comments before we ask for a roll call vote? Roll call.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
No.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
6 yes.
Thank you, Jason. Moving right along, ordinance number 2018-011. Welcome back, Alderman Fagan. 2018-011, publication of the official zoning map of the city of DeKalb, Illinois. This is, we're being requested for passage on first reading, waiver of second reading consideration. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Our principal planner, Dan Olson, is Dan here? Who's going to speak to this item, Joe Ellen? I was just following my script. I didn't see your name, so.
I'll have to go find Dan after this. So this item is on your agenda. We do this every year at this time. State statutes require the city to adopt the official zoning map, which is effective for the prior year. And upon your approval, it's published and available for the community. Just make sure that the map stays updated. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any discussion on the zoning map? Roll call.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Joe Ellen.
Thank you.
Number 3, ordinance 2018-012.
Mayor,
Mr. Mayor.
motion to waive second reading, please.
Oh, that's okay. I'd entertain a motion to waive second reading on that.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 yes.
What would I do without you guys, you know?
You'd be
Okay.
lonely.
Yeah. Let's go number 3. Ordinance number 2018-012, amending Chapter 51 Traffic, Schedule C, Parking Prohibited, Subsection 33, Resident Parking Only, Tow Zone, Subsection 36, No Parking at Any Time, Tow Zone, Subsection 53, No Parking 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., Tow Zone, Subsection 54, 2-hour parking between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., Tow Zone, Subsection 55, no parking 1 a.m. to 8 a.m., Tow Zone, and amending Chapter 51, Schedule 1, snow routes. This is the first reading of this. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, and I'm going to ask Deputy Police Chief John Petrogallo to address this item.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The Safe Streets Initiative has previously been before City Council, where Chief Gene Lowry laid out significant details relating to it. As a result, Phase 1 of the Safe Streets Initiative was approved and is currently being implemented. Tonight, we're asking City Council to consider Phase 2 of this initiative. Phase 2, as you can see on the map, includes the Elwood Historic Neighborhood, the Lauren Hedge University Heights neighborhood, as well as the Heartland Fields neighborhood. In addition to the outreach efforts conducted by Chief Lowry, the following additional measures were taken to notify residents in the Phase 2 areas of safe streets. A DeKalb alert rave DeKalb Alert Rave message that sent out text, email, and voice messages was sent out to each folks that were subscribed to that in those neighborhoods of Phase 2. A press release, which I prepared some documents for each of you if you want to look along as I go. Press release was also provided to local media outlets. And what's on a side note to this press release is during community outreach, one of the residents had mentioned if we had ever considered a QR code to put on our literature, which is a quick response code, and we had not. So based on that feedback, we incorporated QR codes into that press release and also into this informational notice that I'll talk about here in a second. And that QR code will direct whoever scans the code directly to the website, which will provide additional details of Safe Streets, itemized by phase. A Safe Streets Initiative input form was placed onto the DeKalb Police website with a link for comments and suggestions for the initiative. To date, we've only received 2. Additionally, a Safe Streets Initiative overview was placed on the department website under Get Informed, and so far we've received 446 views. This informational notice that you have before you is something that we created and ordered so that we could place on the vehicles for Phase 1. After the ordinance was approved, there was a 14-day grace period, and what we wanted to do is to place these notices on vehicles that would have been in violation of the new ordinance, so that the owners of the vehicles knew of the new parking restrictions, also having a QR code that they could quickly scan and get up-to-date information on the ordinance. And lastly, a door-to-door canvass was conducted in the 3 different neighborhoods. Myself and a number of other command staff and support staff, including Commander Steve Lekis, who's here tonight, engaged in this. Excuse me. And just a couple of notes and some figures. There are 347 residences in this combined Phase 2, so that incorporates the historic district, the Heartland Fields, and the Lauren Hedge neighborhoods. So of those 347 homes, 128 were contacted, residents were contacted in 128, which is a 37% sampling. And of those 128, 109 of the residents that were spoken with were in support of the proposal. 12 were opposed, and mainly the opposition was citing the requirement for the permit fee. And the other remaining 7 residents were indifferent. They neither supported or opposed the program. And what you have before you, the canvas results has the streets itemized in each respective neighborhood. With this, I've got a couple of comments from feedback that we received. First, there was a concern from several that made it to the police department that they were concerned that there was a permit fee required for all vehicles in that area, and I just want to let you know that that's not true. Permitting fee, the permits and the fees associated with those permits are only if for on-street parking. There were several residents that thought it incorporated vehicles that were parked. If you lived in that area, you had to pay the fee, and that's just not correct. Also, regarding the fee and as far as the amount, we did communicate with other municipalities and NIU as well, and other fees that we had observed were from $50 on upwards to over $100 annually. Our current fee is $25, which averages out about 50 cents a week. So we felt that it was reasonable and it would cover the purchase of stickers and placards and associate time for processing of information and the applications. Another comment that we received was a family that had multiple drivers in the household and multiple cars. And one of the cars that they owned had to be parked in the street, and was curious if the placard could be used by multiple household members. And the example was given, they don't all have the same schedule. So whoever got home last parked in the street. And they wondered if that permit could be used by anybody in that family. And we had sat down and had some discussion and felt that that would be appropriate as long as each of the vehicles was registered in the application. So if I arrived home last, I could use that permit that would have my vehicle information associated with it. And if a family member got home after me, they would be able to utilize that permit. So hopefully that alleviates some concern in that respect. With this multifaceted program, and it's geared and designed to enhance public safety in the neighborhoods, we respectfully recommend the approval of Phase 2 of the Safe Streets Initiative. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Before we turn it over to council, as is the case at our meetings, we try to engage the public so that their topics may be germane to any city council action. We have several folks who would like to speak to this. The first person is Steve Neiman. Steve? We would remind the folks that try to stay within that 3-minute limit if you can.
And because of that, we'll try and lump a bunch of things together here. Came to DeKalb, fall of '79, looking for a good place, was assured that single-family residence would continue as a zoning, purchased a home in 1991 at the end of what was then a dead end for Lauren Drive. Came back on 6 different occasions in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the City of DeKalb, multiple notices here regarding changing the zoning. Thankfully, it's always been maintained, but the city went to great efforts putting signage out where you turned in from Glidden, notifying everybody. We received mailings from Planning and Zoning, from the mayor's office, from our own ward person. Fast forward now from that history to the current. Yes, I know this is just getting started, but very disappointing in the manner in which this has been rolled out. First and foremost, went to the website, and again, with all due respect to their canvassing the neighborhood, it was 4 o'clock, and like many of my neighbors, I was at work. And there was nothing left in the door. There was no notification that they came through asking for anything. So basically, having gone through this and hearing that this was unopposed, got messages from several of my neighbors with their concerns and my own. So, having been tied up being an election judge for a number of days, last Wednesday was the first time to check the website regarding the SSI and the memo to Mayor Smith. In that memo, it makes reference to 3 basic areas, Russell Road, Crane, you know them. Number 2 is areas marked in a red cross hatch on a map. First time I saw that, I didn't even think twice about it. Then when I clicked on it, that's when I realized our neighborhood was put in there. First and foremost, in addition to signing my neighbor Liz Hoppenworth's petition, I also learned of a fellow resident having been ticketed despite current street signs saying local resident parking only. More discouraging, her appeal of the ticket was denied and was also told previous parking passes are no longer valid. This goes back to Chief, I pronounce it wrong, Fathan, I apologize, distributed laminated passes for free to all the residents to use. Really? They're no longer valid? When did the city, the police chief, or whoever decide to void these? How about letting us know? No one's informed us of that. Like I say, informing the public on this has been kind of sketchy. Simply putting something on a website, getting an article in the Chronicle is not sufficient, especially when I compare it to the past when people sent from multiple offices representing the city notices to us in the mail. If you click on that map under Phase 2 for the red cross hatch notation, you would not necessarily know the Lauren Hedge name because it's not spelled out in any of the stuff. None of our street names are mentioned by name. It also makes reference to the fact that this area for SSI is predominantly rental housing. We are not rental housing. We'll pursue the one exception to this, which is the city's lack of enforcing the zoning in our neighborhood. Regrettably, we do have a number of houses that are students that are living in them. This is supposed to be single-family residence, and I'm not aware of any change in the zoning for this. Previous articles on SSI indicated regulating street parking would, quote, help reduce crime, unquote, and that parking changes come, quote, in light of a series of violent gang-related crimes, unquote. None of those things have taken place in our location. The only history of issues in our area is the many complaints from myself and my fellow neighbors regarding noise from some of those in violation of the current zoning. Our neighborhood does not have issues with first responder access, nor is there limited visibility, as was cited in other articles by the city. The proposal for us to buy passes for the privilege of parking in front of our own homes is offensive, regardless of the cost. Are the mayor, police force, city staff, or council members required to purchase passes to park in front of their homes? Don't you dare legislate something on us that you're not willing to have affect yourselves. Perception is reality, and the perception right now is that SSI is about crime reduction. So by painting our neighborhood with that broad brush, the police chief, council, city administration are all effectively driving down the resale value of our homes. Now you've identified us as being a problem area. We are not a problem area. The crimes you talk about and everything do not originate in our neighborhood. If anything, we are more concerned by the many failures that have allowed crimes to multiply on all sides of our subdivision. In conclusion, the Lauren Hedge subdivision should not be subject to parking passes or parking changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mati Mohammed.
Good evening, Mayor and all your council members. I am living in DeKalb for the last 25 years, and I have no problem at all in my neighborhood of parking problem or anything else. But all of a sudden, And the survey folks came in to my home like 2 weeks ago, and that all survey was completely rigged. They made it up. I didn't encourage them to sign all the survey with the one police officer. That number was completely rigged. I do not agree with that. And another one, my two sons live outside the state. They come and visit us in Christmas, Thanksgiving, where they're going to park per car. Only thing in my driveway, only two car can be parked. So where I'm going to park the third car? And lastly, why don't you tax the people or charge the people, the other population in the city to parking their cars so they can move in the front of their house? Why they can do it and we cannot do it? So I would completely appreciate your thoughts and think over this, so without giving any judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. David Valentine?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Dave Ballantyne. I'm a resident of the Elwood Historic District. I've lived there for 29 years. I'm also an employee at Northern Illinois University. While I and many of my neighbors agree with the primary motivation behind the Safe Streets initiative, I think that the implementation of the extension of the residents-only parking into the entire historic district is not justified by the available data. The vast majority of the crime and problems take place down in the John and Harrison Street area, and I agree that there may be some problems with overflow, but I think there is room for compromise in this policy of extending the residents-only or restricting parking to certain hours. I think this will have an impact not just on the residents, but on the many students who attend Northern Illinois and who use that area for parking during the day. I think if you were to implement no parking or residents-only parking during the day for that district, many of those students would be forced to purchase parking tickets, which may seem like an inconsequential expense for you, but for many of these students who have lots of other expenses, there's a reason why they don't buy parking passes. Some of it's convenience, but a lot of it is expense. And furthermore, if they are parking there illegally and their cars are towed, I agree with some of the comments that were made earlier. This, again, is an extreme expense for students that cannot afford it. So I would urge the council members to try to find some area or reasonable compromise between the Safe Streets initiatives, what they're trying to accomplish in terms of decreasing the criminal activities in those areas, a compromise between the goals of that and not putting an unfair burden on the residents and the students who use that area for parking during the day. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Elizabeth Hoppenworth. Or as I say, Liz.
That's right, you can.
That's right.
Good evening. I am Liz Hoppenworth, and I am a resident of the Loring Hedge subdivision, where my husband and I and our 7 children reside. And I am one of those homeowners that do possess more than 2 cars. And I am aware, Jerry has clarified, and I understand the officer clarified, that we won't be charged to park in our own driveways, and I'm sure that relieves all of you that you're not required to park in your own driveway that you own also. Having said that, shortly after moving into our home, it became clear that parking was an issue. So we moved into our home 20 years ago. And the parking issue did not stem from students at NIU using my neighborhood to attend classes, which, by the way, would be inconvenient. It seemed to stem from University Village Apartments, people who are not placed on the lease at University Village Apartments, which would require disclosure of their income if you live in low or subsidized housing. They were actually parking in our neighborhood to keep off the lease, and then they could walk across the street to the apartment. About 18 years ago, we approached the city and the city police, and we had signs erected in our neighborhood that says resident parking only, violators will be towed. At that time, we were issued passes for our guests, and I still have my original 18-year-old passes that I have been using for guests. And I was also not aware that somewhere along the line, about those have become null and void. And I'm reiterating what Steve said earlier. Over time, we have seen our neighborhood shift from all single-family homes to more rental properties. My understanding is that currently our neighborhood is still zoned as single-family with no more than 4 unrelated people living in each home. Unfortunately, council, the zoning is not being enforced in our neighborhood, and that's an issue that we need to take up at a later date. For some of my neighbors, this parking tax, this fee that we placed on each of our automobiles parked in front of our own homes, some of our neighbors are under the impression that that will stop any zoning issues we have. But I hate to tell the neighbors that not everyone living in those homes owns cars, nor are they parking them on the city street. So it won't impact what's already an issue with zoning. I understood that the members of the police department came around the neighborhood. I was at work when I found out they had come to the neighborhood. I then canvassed our neighborhood myself. I spent 2 evenings going door to door, meeting with my neighbors. There are 47 homes in our subdivision. 2 of those homes are unoccupied. 28 of those homes signed my petition. I forwarded that to my alderman. 28 homes in our subdivision are opposed to being taxed or fined or have a parking permit to park in front of our homes. 2 of the homes, 6 of the homes I've identified only by observation that those homes are occupied by more than 4 unrelated people living in those homes. I did not approach those folks. We did have one person who was in favor of the parking permit requirement, but he was under the impression it wouldn't cost him anything. He said the officer that came said there'd be no charge. He thought that sounded like a good deal, and I said that isn't how it works. And one person is indifferent, doesn't drive a car, and didn't care. The 2 issues most concerning to me and my fellow neighbors, I think there's 6 of us present today from our subdivision, is that 1, somewhere along the line, our little neighborhood has been identified as a high crime area, when in fact, I don't see data that supports that. This erroneous statement devalues our homes and demoralizes us. After all, responsible homeowners who pay taxes, obey laws, and are respectful of others' privacy and property are probably the best known way to combat poor behaviors and illegal activities. 2, I have read the Safe Street initiatives and reviewed statements by Chief Lowry saying parking bans are a tried and true way to combat crime. The residents of the Lauren Hedge subdivision are very anxious to see crime decrease throughout DeKalb, but fail to see how imposing an automobile tax on each of our vehicles as a means of preventing crime will help us and prevent us, how taxing us will prevent and preventing us from parking on streets in front of our homes will combat crime. During my canvassing that I did in 2 nights, it became clear that there has been confusion on the part of our neighbors and the city police department, and there has been misinformation provided to newer neighbors as to current parking requirements, as well as visitor passes, an issue that many of the long-term residents were not aware of and will need to be clearly communicated. As a neighborhood, we will tell you, we are more than willing to meet with police representatives and city officials to discuss ways that our neighborhood can be part of the greater community good. In preparation for this evening, after doing 2 days of walking around and talking to neighbors, I can tell you that my neighborhood is a neighborhood of people committed to quality life in DeKalb. We are a solid neighborhood. We are unique in the fact that we are sandwiched between the university, low-income housing, and 2 large apartment complexes. But we are unique and special, and we would like it kept that way. And we in no way are interested in being charged for each of our vehicles to park on the city street in front of the homes that we own and that we pay taxes on. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Liz. Jerry Wallstrom?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I guess I was going to ask a few questions, and then I thought, well, before I ask those, I'll think back a little bit of the impression, let's say, the opinion that I got many years ago now when I went to looking at colleges with my daughter. And it's a little different situation, but the end result might be the same. I recall going to these schools, and I recall looking around for parking spaces, and I recall being told, well, you have to go to the police department to get a sticker that will allow you to park in these spots. And it didn't leave, I mean, of course we did that, and it added another half an hour onto the trip. But in essence, it sort of left a bad taste in my mouth, and I still remember that many years later. The questions that I had, so I guess that comment is sort of a generalized comment about the issuing of stickers just in general. The comment that I had primarily is around the John Street Harrison area, which I have properties in. And the question comes up about residents getting these stickers, and they probably, of course, will. Many of them will need to park in the street. And again, I like the idea of the flexibility of perhaps being able to use them from car to car. These students will be paying this $25, and most of these are rented August to August. They'll probably get a sticker for the first 4 months of that year, and then they'll have to come back and get a sticker for the next 5 or 6 months that they're in the house. So they'll actually be paying double for the 1-year time period because of the timing of it. With that being said, the other question that comes up is I will go visit these houses periodically. We will have plumbers and carpenters and heating people come up. Many times they are parking in the streets. Will they have to go, and myself, will we have to go to the police department first to get because we're not residents, will we have to go to the police department first, get a temporary, perhaps, whatever that situation will be, and then maybe even perhaps pay a fee for that so that we can go visit the house for 10 minutes or 15 minutes each time we go. So those were some of the questions that I had about the logistics of this. And again, I probably am either way about how this will eventually come out years down the road. Certainly, parking is pretty restrictive now in that College and John and Harrison Street area. One half of the street typically is no parking now anyway, and the other is no overnight parking. So again, thank you for hearing my comments about that.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, I believe those are all the folks who have indicated an interest in speaking to this ordinance. Now I will turn it over to City Council. Alderman Favor.
So I do have, if the other council members would like to see, I do have the signed petition that Ms. Hoppinsworth had mentioned. I did receive a number of comments from residents. As they've mentioned, the subdivision is currently residential only parking. In my understanding, when I drove through, I saw very few cars parked on the street as I drove through the subdivision. And so I guess one of my questions is, do we need to make a change in a subdivision that is already considered residential parking only and is not having any issues or problems today? I know the Safe Streets initiative is, for phase 2 was to prevent leakage or bleed over from when the phase 3 goes into effect. But at this point, while there's not a problem, do we need to do anything? Is one of my questions.
Okay. John, if you want to answer that now, you can, but I want to continue to have discussion here.
Sure. That is exactly one of the reasons, and I would agree with that Lauren and Hedge neighborhood being a safe place. It is. We don't have many problems there at all, but the intent is that if this passes and if Phase 3 is put into effect, the end result, we believe, will be some bleed over of parking violations. And if it becomes more restrictive in Phase 3, the intent is to protect that neighborhood from other parking violations. Let's see, the alibi issue, or the issue about having guests stop over at your house for a brief time or an overnight, all you would need to do is call into the police department and to provide license or vehicle information, and you'd be able to park there. So it is not as restrictive as you might think. So if you have a contractor over to work on your house, or a friend or a relative that's going to spend the night, all you need to do is call into the station and let us know what the vehicle information is, and you could do so.
That's pretty much the case now throughout the city, is it not?
Yes, and it would continue to be the case. And that also goes for the historic neighborhood. I can't remember who spoke to that, but the College and John area typically is one of our higher crime areas in that historic section, and by restricting that whole neighborhood, we felt that would protect the folks that are living outside that area from pushover of parking violations. So that was the intent. The stickers that you would purchase, and I understand the gentleman had stated that he thought that students or whoever would get double charged, but we actually mirrored the permit fees on a August to August rotation that way, because we took into account that there would be many students that would need these permits. So I'm in full agreement with that. We did take that into account.
Why don't we just turn it over to some comments? And John, I want you to stay at the podium there, if you would, please. Alderman Fanouken.
All right, so let's follow up on one of Mr. Wallstrom's comment about the repair vehicles. Now, would a repair vehicle identify, logos, Gas or Commonwealth or any of those? You wouldn't expect the resident to call in on those, though, would you? I mean, that's kind of what you just said about having a contractor or somebody there to make a phone call. I would expect that a logoed repair vehicle of one type or another would be able to park on the street.
Sure. There is some common sense to this.
Yeah.
However, we would request that a phone call did come into the station, because there are a lot of contractors that drive their vehicles home and park. So just to get that information to us so we know that there'd be a vehicle there working on the house.
All right, but, let's carry that a step further, and we'll use ComEd. They could come and be up working on a pole and not even be at a particular home. Same thing with cable or even NI Gas. I mean, there's, again, as you said, common sense issues.
Right.
If I can jump in on the contractor
please.
parking, as council may recall, Phase 1 initially came to the council and then came back to the council for consideration of some revisions. One of the revisions was addressing contractor services, and the ordinance now specifically indicates that where there's a contractor providing services to a resident and they're parked at or near the resident's house and they're actively engaged in that process, there is no requirement for a guest permit. Certainly, as Deputy Chief Petrogallo indicated, notice is always appreciated, but that's something that the council had raised as a concern that you legislated relief to in the last time that Phase 1 came back before council.
And again, that's one of the things I want to make clear, as Mr. Wallstrom raised the question. I think that's important to, again, have that publicly stated. Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Favor again.
Sure, I'll ask a question of, maybe to my fellow aldermen. I guess what would be, again, seeing that the subdivision, they feel that there's not going to be a problem when Phase 3 is enacted, would it be possible to remove that subdivision from Phase 2 and to be considered at an alternate time should anything arise?
One of our options is certainly to amend this ordinance.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, this is first reading.
First, I'd like to hear from...
Yeah, I've had a number of calls from that Lauren University Drive area. Nobody is in favor of this.
No.
My point was, I've lived here for 56, 57 years. I know where that neighborhood is. I'm really sorry, Steve, as you are, that you heard that this was a high-crime area. I certainly wouldn't consider it a high-crime area. I get upset when I hear that DeKalb is a high-crime city. Doesn't that bother you? So, yeah, I understand the concern that you have. And so I think your question is a good one. And John, I guess maybe I just answered the question that Alderman Favor posed, and that is that we could, if we wanted to, amend this ordinance to delete a specific neighborhood out if we felt strongly on that. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yes? Okay. That's the shortest answer you've given in a long time, Dean. Alderman Noriko.
I have a question about timing. If we adopt the posture well, there isn't, a problem in a particular area, kind of recognizing the police department's concern that there will be spillover. So you're trying to be proactive, because I heard, certainly Dave Ballantyne's comments about, some of the historic district. I heard that about, Thornbrook. It's the idea that, well, there isn't a problem now and we'll react, if we see data that there is. Long preamble, but how long, how much of a delay would there be between seeing some kind of spike in crime before any action could be taken?
I'm not following your question. Action that the police would take?
I got nothing.
Yeah, okay, I've lost everybody. Okay, the argument for designating that one area, as well as some of the historic district, is we need to be proactive. See, I actually caused people to leave. We need to be proactive. If instead we said, there is no problem yet, we won't designate them this way, and we'll react when there is a problem. How long would it take for a problem to be recognized and action to be taken? Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's clear.
Good.
We monitor our data on a daily and weekly basis. So if they're, and the residents themselves are going to know, if a string of any type of crime happens in a neighborhood that does not have crime, it's going to be frontline news for the neighborhood. So as we see it, that's something that we could address immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we do so. Typically, we look at our data, and the neighborhood in and around Lauren and Hedge to the northwest, we have a high call volume there, and we do have some significant crime that does occur from time to time there.
Mm-hmm.
So the intent of the spillover is what we felt was good for that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
At any time, depending on the direction of the council, we can continue to look at the numbers and readdress this in the future if that's what you desire.
So,
Alderman Markwart?
Okay. I understand both sides of the argument, and I think part of the reasoning, and maybe it didn't come clear, is that by having the permit in that area for the street parking, it takes the guesswork out of the issue for the police department. So the police department can simply drive down the street, see if it's got the permit or not, and know if it's a resident parking there. So it takes that guesswork out of that for them. I don't know how many of the residents that live in that area actually call and complain about non-residents parking there. I don't police my neighborhood, for all the cars that are parking up and down on my street. I know that with spring break, there's 3 or 4 additional cars that are there now, and I'm assuming that they are probably kids who are home for spring break from someplace, or friends, or whatever. So, in defense of the ordinance, part of that is to make it easy for a police officer who's driving down the street to go, okay, taking all the guesswork out and not relying on the residents to actually call and complain about who's here or not here. And that does help with the spillover that has been talked about potentially from University Village. So I think that was the basis behind all that, if that makes sense. That probably, maybe that explains it a little better for you. It doesn't. Okay. So, no, you commented, you commented by shaking your head no. So I'm just saying.
We had a pass that was given to us for free from the DeKalb Police Department. That identifies the residents. And trust me, we have phoned in people who are parking that are not residents.
You don't have
Unlike
any
yours.
representatives, why you are favoring the one we like to do?
You're gonna make the revenue off the parking tickets instead of us in the neighborhood.
We pay taxes too.
Okay, let's try to keep this civil, if you will. Alderman Favor.
So I would make a motion to amend the ordinance to remove the Lauren Hedge University Heights subdivision area from Phase 2 of the Safe Streets Parking Initiative.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded.
So that would include Lauren Drive, University Drive, and Northern Court and Hedge Drive.
Yes, that area on the west.
Phase 2 on west of Annie Glidden.
Right. Any further discussion on that amendment? We're amending the motion to approve the ordinance or to delete the Lauren University area from Phase 2, right? Alderman Noriko.
I think there is a stronger argument for removing that section at this point. I'm really torn about the historic district, frankly. You know, I've had comments one way or the other. I think that because of the history of problems, you know, the John Street kind of spilling over into the College Avenue area, I am not going to recommend amending, doing anything with that area at this point, but I encourage residents as, you know, this is implemented, and I know, you know, I can count on, you know, contact with the police department, you know, just to kind of monitor this situation, so.
Alderman Jacobson.
I know there were some questions at one point in going through some of the previous ordinance that had listed. Do we know what that neighborhood, at least an ordinance says now? Was the resident only parking certified through ordinance, or was it done as a convenience to residents, or how does that look now?
The previously issued permits you're asking about?
Again, I'm looking back to going back into ordinance to see. I know there was some confusion at some point in a lot of these neighborhoods. They would slap up signs. A couple years later, the signs would change. When we were going through at the Public Works level, a lot of these street signage changes, there were dozens of different parking classifications all over the city. What is the current ordinance for this small neighborhood say now?
I would have to go back and try and reconstruct that for you because, as you note, there have been a number of ordinance changes over the years that have not always been internally consistent.
Correct.
So there are many areas where there are conflicts. This ordinance as drafted eliminated those, but with the removal, we would go back and reevaluate and see if any other clarifying legislation would be needed for council.
I mean, the reality very well could be if we pull this, that the resident-only parking, again, the reality that the passes that are 18 or 20 years old are going to continue to be valid, likely will go away at some point. I mean, my fear is that it's not backed in law, and this neighborhood becomes the Wild West, but again, that's the residents' own requirement, if that's what they choose, I guess, in this case. understanding that one of the questions was, none of the other aldermen have to follow this. I do. Obviously, I live on Edgebrook. I own property on Greenbrier. I do have to get a pass to park on the street if I so choose to. And understanding that, voted for it in my neighborhood because it made sense for my neighborhood. Clearly, there's several residents that don't feel it does in their neighborhood at this point. I don't have any problem pulling it from tonight's vote. I would like to come back and at least have it on the agenda in one of the other phases to understand what the laws look like there and what we can do to work with the residents. I don't want it, in removing it, just making it go away at this point, but table it for further conversation at a later date. I'm completely okay with that.
Any other comments? We have a motion, oh yes, Alderman Verbeek.
And please do continue to report if you do believe too many people are living in a residence. We need to know about that. If our staff is not responsive to that, please let your alderman know. This is not just an issue in your particular neighborhood. This is an issue throughout the city. If you see something that's not right, please say so.
We have a motion on the floor and a second to amend the first reading of this ordinance to delete the Lauren University Drive area, that area west of Annie Glidden Road. Roll call.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 yes.
So now we're still discussing the original ordinance with the Lauren University neighborhood having been removed. Is there any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor for the original motion, which is for everything approving Phase 2 other than the one that we just amended or deleted. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 yes.
So moved. Okay, moving right along. Thank you, John. And that was first reading.
Yes.
Okay. We perhaps better not even suggest that we have a second reading of this tonight.
Not
Okay,
tonight.
good. Or a waive of that. Okay, moving along. Item number 4, ordinance 2018-013, authorizing an FY 2018 tax increment financing funding agreement with Barb City Manor, Inc., and amending the City of DeKalb FY 2018 budget. This is the first reading. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Jason Mitchnick is going to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you this evening is an ordinance that would do two things. First, it would approve the annual tax increment financing agreement with Barb City Manor, but it would also amend the city's 2018 budget for TIF 2. At our last meeting, we discussed the ownership structure and services that are provided by Barb City Manor moving into the future. We do have quite a bit of time. Next June is when the current lease agreement with Barb City Manor would expire. So at this point in time, we are only recommending to move forward with the annual agreement. Last year, the city did approve $100,000 in TIF funding for improvements at Barb City Manor. One of the projects that they had planned to use the funding for was the fire escape, not the overhaul of the fire escape, but just repairs to the fire escape. However, after having an architect take a look at that, it was recommended that they do need to replace the fire escape, which came at a higher cost. So that project was not, that funding was not spent in 2017, and Barb City Manor requested that it be rolled over into their 2018 agreement. in the amount of $47,910. This was not budgeted for during the budget process, so it would require the budget amendment, which is why we've tied these two items together. And to avoid the confusion that we had last week with the other budget amendment, we did put these in the same ordinance. To vote, you would require a supermajority again to cover the budget amendment, but that would also require a supermajority then to approve the agreement with Barb City Manor. Executive Director Maureen Garrity is here this evening to answer any questions you may have, and she has also requested that the city consider a waiver of second reading on this ordinance and pass on first. So this is the $147,910 would be used for the fire escape project this year, and then the city staff would continue to work with Barb City Manor staff to identify other projects for designation as part of the end of TIF 2. And then also be coming back at a later date for the new lease agreement that would shift the maintenance obligation to Barb City Manor. And I would entertain any questions that council has.
Okay. I don't think anybody's speaking to this from the audience. Any comments? We had talked about the value of Barb City Manor to this community earlier. Roll call.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbeck,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
8 yes.
I'd like to make a
Motion to waive and approve second reading?
Let me do it.
You going to second it, Pat?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we waive second reading on this ordinance. Any discussion? Roll call.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbeck,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
8 yes.
Very good. Thank you, Jason. Moving right along. Item number 5.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Ordinances authorizing an amendment to Chapter 38 intoxicating liquors, Section 38.27, C8 gambling devices by increasing the fixed number of liquor licenses for establishments that qualify as video gaming establishments as follows. A, Ordinance 2018-014, authorizing an amendment to Chapter 38 intoxicating liquors, Section 38.27 C8 gambling devices by increasing the fixed number of liquor licenses for establishments that qualify as video gaming establishments by 1 for the property located at 850-852 South 4th Street, subject to conditions. We would treat that as first reading. B, Ordinance 2018-015, authorizing an amendment to Chapter 38 intoxicating liquors, Section 38.27 C8 gambling devices by increasing the fixed number of liquor licenses for establishments that qualify as video gaming establishments by 1 for the property located at 1221 West Lincoln Highway, subject to conditions. First reading. And finally, C, Ordinance 2018-016, authorizing an amendment to Chapter 38 intoxicating liquors, Section 38.27 C8 gambling devices by increasing the fixed number of liquor licenses for establishments that qualify as video gaming establishments by 1 for the property located at 110-124 East Hillcrest Drive. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I've been told by legal counsel that we need to address each of these individually. We do have one speaker to this, and that is Dwayne Brown. And then we'll turn it over to you, Joe Ellen.
Dwayne Brown, Fourth Ward. In the March 27th, 2017 City Council meeting, the number of standalone video gaming establishments was capped at 7. Despite Alderman Fanouken's amended motion to set the cap at 10. Alderman Baker said he wanted to make sure the door was kicked open and supported the cap at 10. This didn't happen. The door was slammed shut and locked. I told the council they had made a moral judgment and that this is just another example of the city being anti-business friendly. We need to remove the cap and allow the fee and lower the fees, remove the 500-foot requirement, and let the free market determine the number of video gaming establishments. The Illinois Video Gaming Act of 2009 is one decision the state has done right. Illinois has one video gaming terminal for every 481 residents. For the first time, Illinois revenue from video gaming surpasses casinos. According to the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability, for fiscal year 2017, Illinois received a total of $1.31 billion from these four sources. $6 million from horse racing, $270 million from riverboat casinos, $296 million from video gaming, and $738 million from the lottery. It's foolish to be sending our tax money to neighboring communities because we have a cap on video gaming establishments. Keep the money in DeKalb. The St. Charles City Council at their March 19th meeting voted 7-3 to continue video gaming. They have 55 video gaming machines in 15 locations. St. Charles only has a population of 32,974. Waukegan has 38 video gaming establishments earning over $500,000 a year. They earmarked the money to help police and fire pensions. The manager of Lucky Jack's in Waukegan, Bridget Weber, said in December alone, $900,000 was bet, resulting in $80,000 in taxable income. The city got $4,000 and the state got $20,000. They are so successful, they have opened parlors in Zion, North Chicago, and Park City. Weber said, we offer a cool, calm environment to play. Lenny's Gas and Wash in Monica, in 1 year alone, has generated $21.1 million played, and their portion is $540,160 in taxable income, in taxes for the city. The Rock Corner Marathon in Fox Lake has had $15.1 million played and reaped $403,930 for their portion in 1 year. Video gaming in Illinois is only a few years old, and look at the revenue that it is generating. Don't cap it, don't restrict it, and ease the regulatory burdens on it. We need the revenue for our streets and fleet, fire and police pensions, and high staff salaries and severance pay. Thank you.
There's no doubt where you stand, Dwayne. Okay, Joe Allen, before you proceed, I'd like to ask legal counsel, our city attorney, Alderman Jacobson has left the room because he has recused himself from voting on one of these ordinances. Can he vote on the other two, or would he prefer, or is it not within his legal right to vote on the other two where he's not involved? Is he here? Dave?
I'm going to fully recuse on all three of them.
You're going to recuse all three?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you,
David, for answering that question. Joellen?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you will recall, this item was discussed in quite a bit of detail at your last council meeting, and despite the comments from Mr. Brown, this wasn't about, whether we're going to reconsider how we do video gaming. The purpose of the ordinances before you tonight is in direct follow-up to your direction, which was that you wanted us to consider additional video gaming licenses on a case-by-case basis as we receive them. Right. So at that meeting, we had described 4 locations to you. One of the ones is no longer proceeding with their request, so Pursuant to your direction, we prepared ordinances for the 3 remaining addresses to bring forward to you for consideration. And again, what this would do is provide the additional license or increase the additional licenses in the code by 1, subject to these applicants then going forward, submitting an application for a special use. And that special use process requires a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission and approval on first and second reading by the council. So if this is purely the direction that you gave at the last meeting, these are the ordinances that have been prepared in response to that direction. The 3 locations, real quickly, I'll go through, is 850 South 4th Street, and this is the building owned by Brian Shalley, where the insurance location is provided. There are 2 facilities that are not standalone video gaming facilities, but 2, a bar and another fraternal organization in close proximity that do have video gaming machines at those locations. The second location is at 1221 West Lincoln Highway. It's the vacant property owned by Fatty's and used currently for their overflow parking. They're looking at constructing a multi-use building on that facility, which would include a standalone video gaming facility. The final location is at 110 and through 124 East Hillcrest. It's a strip shopping center just east of 1st Street on the south side of Hillcrest. And again, that center has quite a variety of uses, some long-term vacancies, and the new owner of that property is desirous of bringing in a standalone video gaming facility to that location as well. No question that these do produce some pretty interesting, substantial revenues. I did provide some additional information in the financial impact that, again, was collected by our management analyst for this report. It's just interesting to throw out there. This is the most successful video gaming establishment in the community, the numbers that are provided on page 3 of the staff report. So there's a substantial amount played, and of the gambling income that's generated, a little over $500,000. The state gets 25% of that, which is $133,000, and the city gets almost $27,000 from that one establishment. Our fees are pretty nominal compared to some of the other fees, and the direction I think I received at the last meeting was to leave those alone. So moving forward, if you do proceed with this, we expect that any new licenses, if they go through the process and get approved, could generate up to an additional $25,000 if they're as successful as the business that's there. These ordinances are capable of being approved on a case-by-case basis. I know I have owners and interested parties from at least one of the addresses on the 4th Street address. I'm not sure if we have others. I do know the owner of Fatty's is out of town, so if there are conversations or questions about that, we might want to pull that from consideration. I know you made a motion at the beginning of this discussion, but we will need a separate motion on each one of these ordinances. So you might want to clarify for the clerk that the motion that you made is for the first location at 850 to 852 South 4th Street, that first ordinance that you read, Mayor.
Okay.
So if there's any questions at this point, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments? And then we will move on each of these individually. Alderman Noriko.
I'm still not thrilled at the idea of, adding video gaming. However, I think that the process of having the opportunity for additional community input and having these go to planning and zoning will really help flesh out what the community feel is, and will then, make me more comfortable with, the ultimate direction I go. So I'm going to vote yes for each of these, so that the natural process plays out.
Thank you. Any other, Alderman Favor.
So again, I too am torn on these. It's not my favorite, if you said, hey, what kind of business do you want to have come into DeKalb? This isn't my, hey, let's go and get these. That's not what I would go and attract. However, part of it is being business friendly. And just to give you confirmation, I don't see anything wrong with the fees that we charge. I wouldn't change those. I think what we did last year by being able to establish some distance requirements and things like that that we did not have in place before, I think that absolutely makes sense. So I will support the, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to say it.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2018-014 for 850-852 South 4th Street.
I'll make that motion.
We already have one on
You
the
already
floor. I
have that
believe
one.
it was for
Yeah.
that specifically.
I beg your pardon?
We already have that motion on the floor. That was the motion that was the very first one.
Do we? All right. We had seconded?
Yeah, it was seconded.
Oh, so that was just for the first one? I thought it was all for all three. Okay, good. Sorry about that.
worries.
Roll call.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
7 yes.
Okay,
Make a
now
motion that
moving.
we waive and pass on second reading.
Can we waive on second reading? Okay. Would you?
I
It's
made
been
the
moved
motion.
and seconded that we waive second reading on this.
I'm
Any
sorry,
further
who seconded?
discussion? Roll call.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
No.
Smith?
Yes.
6 yes.
Okay. Now moving right along, I'd like a motion on ordinance 2018-015 for the property at 1221 West Lincoln Highway.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Roll call.
Favor?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
7 yes.
Again, I'd like to move that we waive second reading and pass.
I was anticipating that.
Thank you.
Okay. Been moved and seconded that we waive second reading. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
No.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
6 yes.
And finally, a motion, please, for ordinance 2018-016 at the property at 110-124 East Hillcrest Drive.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
7 yes.
Again, move that we waive second reading and pass.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded that we waive second reading. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
No.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
6 yes.
Thank you.
Clarified the message, Joe Allen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Moving right along, resolution, number 6, resolution 2018-035, authorizing an FY 2018 tax increment financing agreement with Preservation of the Egyptian Theater for facility improvements to the Egyptian Theater in an amount not to exceed $100,000, beginning March 26, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. No member of the audience is speaking to this. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mention it, yes.
On February 21st of this year, Council was presented with an alternative analysis and organizational plan from Preservation of the Egyptian Theater, which dates back to the January 23rd of 2017 recommendation from Janice Barlow and Associates that included potential ownership and governance changes and the relationship and ownership structures between the city and the Egyptian Theater. During that presentation in February, PET did mention that they would be coming forward with a request for alterations to the facility. At this time, the resolution before you this evening would only be for the $100,000 that the city has annually budgeted for capital improvements for the Egyptian Theater. At that time, staff didn't gather any consensus from council that would have led to us making any substantial changes to the agreement structure. So the agreement before you this evening is a status quo. It does not include any changes from past annual agreements. And it would be for $100,000 for which was included in the budget. So this is just a resolution that would approve that agreement. It would not require a supermajority vote or changing our budget. If there's any questions that council has this evening.
Any questions or comments? Alderman Jacobson.
I was under the impression we were intentionally holding this until we had come to some resolution on some of those items, no?
That was not the consensus that we had from staff, that we were holding off on this. I think one of the things that was said is when this was brought forward, there could be conversation that would take place that would lead to the two changes in either the annual agreement or the other items that were discussed in terms of ownership and governance.
Any further comments? Alderman Jacobson.
Again, until we have some sort of semblance of an answer about those things, again, I know that was part of the discussion, at least internally with me, that we were waiting for some resolution on those things. I don't understand why we'd go ahead and release those funds now until we have that resolution. There are several questions as to governance and ownership and those things that we've had very brief discussion on, but we haven't gotten into the meat and bones of those discussions at this point, and I would assume it will take us at least a full cow to get through those items before we have any sort of consensus of where we want to do, plus a few weeks to decide, obviously, whether or not they're going to accept those ideas the council has for them. I just think we have a long road to go before we rectify those issues, and don't know why we'd continue to release funds, being that we've already released significant funds in terms of the Barlow study and other plans before we have an action plan and an idea of where we want to go forward.
Any further discussion? Any further comments? Roll call. Oh, excuse me. Alderman Orico, I'm sorry.
You know, I do recall that we did have discussion about areas of concern, but there was general approval of the increased activity and the programs that were coming through the Egyptian. My concern with, scheduling a cow is, frankly, I'm not sure when and how we could get that done in the near term. I would be willing to support this at this point with the understanding that before or by third quarter of this year, we do have that cow. So we aren't faced with the same time crunch next year, and that we can address the issues that, as a whole, we had concerns about, and certainly Alderman Jacobson has brought up.
Alderman Jacobson.
Again, that time crunch wasn't caused by us. It was caused by PET and their very, very slow response back to the Barlow study after our staff engaged them. That's not on us as far as I'm concerned. They wanted the time and energy to do the plan, and they've given us somewhat of a response. Now it's incumbent on us to give them a response to their hopes and wishes, I'd imagine, and we haven't set aside the time to do so yet. Again, that doesn't create any sort of time crunch or time burden. the reality is, being that most of these are long-term capital projects, whether it's spent in this fiscal or next fiscal, it's going to go toward a bigger project anyway. And I think we should have all of our ducks in a row before we move forward with funding that. To say, well, we'll do it by the third quarter, creates an incumbent rush on them to get the money spent, so they could say, well, it's spent, there's nothing else, there's nothing we can do this year, and I don't want to put them in that situation. So I would motion that we table this until that cow is held and ask to have it in the very near future.
Do we need to act on a motion to table if we get a second?
If there's a second?
There has not been a second.
Second.
You second it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the motion is to table action on Resolution 2018-035. Any further discussion?
And just for clarification of the motion for the record, that was to table it until after the council has a committee of the whole discussion regarding the Egyptian theater.
Correct.
Joellen?
Just to add a comment, if it helps the council in your consideration, the board did take the feedback provided by the council at the last meeting very seriously and are having discussions about ownership and governance. Their hope was that they would have this move forward, as their annual request has in the past. They are expecting to come back to you fairly shortly, I would think probably even before the third quarter, with their thoughts on how they intend to proceed with the expansion of the bathrooms and the concession areas, and a request for air conditioning, and it was their thought that at that point, they would be prepared to respond to those issues.
Yeah, to Dave's point, I thought we had discussed this before, and gosh, if we get another cow on this, I'm going to have a cow, you know what I mean? It's just, we've talked about this and talked about this, but hey, this is not my decision, this is the council's. We have a motion on the floor to table this tonight until we have a committee of the whole meeting. Roll call.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
No.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
No.
Markwart?
No.
Fagan?
No.
Smith?
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to pass Resolution 2018-035. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Verbeck?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
No.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you, Jason. Moving along to item number 7, Resolution 2018-036, authorizing a funding agreement for social service delivery for University Village and the surrounding area. Motion.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Once again, Jason Michnick, our Economic Development Planner, will address this issue.
Thank you, Mayor. A month ago, I gave a brief overview of the proposal for social service delivery at University Village. Last summer, the city had released a request for proposal encouraging collaboration between multiple agencies to address the several needs that had been identified in University Village by residents. I won't go into too much detail or history there. I'd like to give all of the agencies that have come this evening to go into detail and let them speak. So at this time, I'd invite Tanisha up here if she wants to start things off. Tanisha is the Executive Director from Family Service Agency, who would be the lead agency on this collaboration. Once everybody gets through their part of their presentation and going into a little bit more depth, I'll go a little bit more into the structure of the agreement for you. So, Tanisha?
Hi, Tanisha.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. As Jason said, I'm Tanisha Clegg, the Executive Director of Family Service Agency. Tonight you're going to hear from a group of agencies that have come together to form a University Village Social Service Partnership. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to introduce everyone to you, if that's okay. With us tonight, I have Jennifer Cataldo. She's the Clinical Supervisor with Family Service Agency. Lynette Spencer, Executive Director of Adventure Works. Dan Kenny, Executive Director of Community Gardens. Cindy Graves, Director, Community Health and Prevention, and Director, Health Education and Emergency Preparedness at the DeKalb County Health Department. And Susan Peterson, Executive Director of 4C. Marianne Coles, Director of Workforce and Community Education, and Lucretia Conan, Director of Business and Training Partnerships. In a moment, each of them are going to give you a summary of the services that they're going to provide as part of this collaboration. And in addition to employing the case manager, which Jennifer Cataldo will share with you in a moment, FSA will act as the fiscal agent and coordinator of the collaboration, facilitating the meetings and data of the entire group and ensuring that the services are seamless to the residents of University Village. At this time, I'd like to turn this over to the group to elaborate on the services. And Jennifer, would you please get us started with FSA's case management services?
All right. Family Service will be responsible for hiring and training the neighborhood case manager. This person, we are expecting to work 12 to 18 hours during a week. Ideally, this will be a resident from University Village. Their responsibilities will include conducting assessments, developing action plans, and implementing the plans. FSA will also be responsible for supervising this person. Another FSA responsibility will be to schedule and coordinate meetings with co-agencies. We have already been doing this, and we have agreed to meet once a month to begin with until we get everything in place. We will also be gathering data and preparing and delivering quarterly reports and annual reports. Case management is a collaborative effort to meet an individual and family's comprehensive needs. So what we'll be doing is the case manager will be doing an assessment, looking at the needs of each of the clients that come in, making a plan to meet those needs, whether it's learning English as a second language, or food needs, or whatever the needs may be, counseling. They will be making a plan, putting into action where the plan needs to be done, collaborating with our co-agencies with the services that they provide, and then evaluating the outcomes. Family Service Agency has 4 departments. We have Center for Counseling, so we can provide counseling and therapy for people of all ages. We have Big Brothers Big Sisters, which provide support to children in the area. We have Senior Services, which provide a ton of activities for our senior population, and the Children's Advocacy Center that we do trauma assessments, in-person support during court appearances, and caregiver education. Anything else?
Good evening. I'm Lynette Spencer. I'm the Director of Adventure Works in DeKalb, and our mission is guiding youth in overcoming life challenges through adventure-based counseling and education. And our University Village Adventure University program, which is it? No. Okay. Our Adventure University program is a place-based program that we go to the village and provide services the same as every other organization that is presenting and part of this collaborative tonight. We are just super excited to be able to focus on the outdoor education and positive youth development piece of our mission with our kids and raising them in a healthy manner, helping them all the way through childhood and adolescence into a healthy adulthood. We piloted our program, but in December of 2016, and ran it for about 6 months until Camp Power started, where we integrated with Camp Power last summer. And so we'll be continuing to integrate with Camp Power in our summer programming, and then continuing the good work that they've started in the village throughout the entire school year in the after-school format of our program. And I don't know if you remember, that we met the first year that AdventureWorks was in play, and that we became an organization in 2010. And we met about the Ward 1 and about the problems there and about addressing some of those issues. So I'm super excited to be able to bring those ideas to life and to implement our program. Through our Positive Youth Development Program, we use a nationally recognized evidence-based curriculum that hits on the 5 C's of youth development, and those are character, compassion, making connections, developing competence, and confidence. And our group, over the first 6 months of our program, identified that there was another C that they wanted to add to that, and that was contribution, because our kids really love to give back. And that was where some of our collaboratives started with University Village, the DeKalb County Community Gardens. We've collaborated with them prior to our village program, but then in the village, helping the kids plant a garden from start to finish, and recognizing just the power of coming together and creating something that grows and gives back to the community. We have also done volunteer projects. We're working with the DeKalb Park District in Welsh Park to do some beautification projects this coming year. And so we've just reached out and done a lot of collaboration in this with the organizations that are involved in this funding collaborative, as well as external organizations. This is a picture of our first group. We pulled, one of our board members is an NIU police officer, and so she came to visit us in the program. We had DeKalb Police come to visit us as well. And so we've reached out to invite others to come in and meet our kids and help provide all of those services that you might expect in an after-school program. Right now, we are aiming to restart. Our program kind of went on a hiatus when the office construction started at the village, and that's going to be finished hopefully mid-May is what we're looking at, and restarting our meeting place there. Another once a week, 4 to 6 p.m. time, and then expanding as we can with other funding. We have other funding partners, including that in addition to the cities offering this funding through the security properties allotment, but we have the DeKalb County Mental Health Board, the Roberts Family Foundation, the DeKalb County Community Foundation, 3M was a past partner, and OC Creative, a local business, was an in-kind partner as well, helping us create some of our graphics. To try to wrap it up real quickly here, Gather, Guide, Grow is our organizational ethos, and we apply it to every aspect of our programming. Those are just some of the, you might imagine, gathering all of our resources together and helping the kids understand that we don't make decisions, we don't guide you, we don't let you move through any problem or any program without gathering all the resources we have to make that effective for you, and then learning through those processes. That's how we grow. So that's kind of the process that we take them through in their own program, and we try to make it their own, as much of their own program as possible. So just a picture from our backyard and one of our programs last spring, doing some fire building with the kids and roasting marshmallows, getting them off the village property as well as part of our initiative. So I'll turn it over to, Community Gardens is next, Dan Kenny, and then at the end, I think we'll all take questions. Okay. Here you go, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for this opportunity to share with you the good work of DeKalb County Community Gardens and our role in this excellent collaborative approach to provide valuable services to the residents of University Village. DCCG is in the beginning of its 6th year as an organization. In our first 5 years, we have established 58 community gardens sites all around the county. DCCG has established gardens at elementary schools, low-income housing locations, churches, daycares, food pantries, senior citizen locations, Kishwaukee Hospital, as well as others. DCCG has coordinated garden rental spaces in Genoa, DeKalb, and now Sycamore. We have established many partnerships that include 2 agreements with the city of DeKalb. Our Community Food Needs Program has impacted the lives of hundreds of citizens in the county by raising and distributing over 150,000 pounds of fresh, healthy food to those who struggle to meet the food needs of their families. DCCG has worked in the University Village for over the past 3 years. We first put in our gardens there when Camp Power started. We have employed youth of University Village through our Community Growers Program, providing soft job skills as well as training in vegetable production. As you know, University Village is located in the Annie Glidden North neighborhood, which has limited availability and access to fresh and healthy food choices, and University Village residents has identified that as one of the needs they want addressed, is the increased access to food. Last May, we also established our Grow Mobile program, which is a mobile food pantry. Since that time, since last May, we have traveled to all the different communities in the county as well as University Village and distributed over 40,000 pounds of food that way in our partnership with Northern Illinois Food Bank. So as part of this collaborative, DCCG will be establishing more gardens on the property of University Village. We will be working, as Lynette said, with Adventure U and with those gardens, and serving the food and serving the needs of nutrition for the families that the case manager has identified in need of food. We will also provide additional learning and training opportunities for youth at University Village, and our Grow Mobile mobile pantry will set up there at least once a month as a minimum. This collaborative is providing valuable wraparound services, and DCCG is happy to be part of this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Good evening, and thank you for considering this proposal. So I'm really excited. 4C is not asking for funding, but what we're hoping to do is increase the likelihood of us helping parents be successful and children be ready for kindergarten. We have a family enrichment program, which is a very intensive program that works with families in their homes, in their language, and at a convenient time. So we are in the village currently a little bit less proportion than what we'd like to. So we're really hoping through this initiative that when the case manager meets with families, they're able to identify some needs that aren't met, some barriers, and some gaps in services. So once those families are identified, once there's relationships that are built, then we're going to hopefully be able to increase the number of families that participate in our programs. Our outcomes, our goals are to help children learn to love, laugh more, have healthy meals, and engage in learning. We know when children are successful in kindergarten, they're successful in junior high, high school, and on in life. So we take those young children, grow their minds, help their spirits, feed their bodies, and we're going to have a really great community. I really thank you for considering having a collaboration in this fashion. With the case manager, families and individuals will meet with one person. They're not going to have to go to a lot of agencies. Again, transportation is a barrier. Sometimes just asking for help is a barrier. This is a great way for our community to come together, help children succeed. Thanks.
Thanks, Susan.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Graves, and I won't bother you with my title again. I'm with the DeKalb County Health Department. As Susan had mentioned with 4C, DeKalb County Health Department is not part of the funding part of this grant, but we are definitely an integral part of the success of the grant and the grant outcomes. So DeKalb County Health Department, we are within the Annie Glidden corridor. As a matter of fact, we are part of the footprint of the neighborhood that's been identified as the Annie Glidden corridor. So we are less than 1 mile from University Village. This is a one-page document that we have with all of our services, and as you can see, we have a lot of services that people don't even know we have. I would recommend that if you were interested to go onto our website or just Google on YouTube. We have a couple of videos that we put together that talks about what is public health, what do we really do. They're really nice videos, and I would encourage you to do that. We have the clinical services, which of course is mostly the services that we will be integral part of this grant. So let me just point out a few of the clinical services that will impact this. Family planning is one of them. And in a nutshell, our family planning services allow males and females to prevent unplanned pregnancies so they can keep control of their lives and they can reach their important life goals on their timeline. Very important. Family case management. First of all, this is not to be confused with the on-site case management that is outlined in the grant. This is something that is in place throughout most health departments, and the specific population that we're talking about with family case management within health department structure are those for pregnant women and infants. And what we are doing is we are trying to provide information needed to have a healthy pregnancy and, of course, to increase the odds of better birth outcomes. They are assigned a personal case manager within our department, so they do have one person to focus on with that, which is part of what I see as the pluses for this grant, because we show that this is exactly what people need. They need that personal touch. They need that person to be able to go to. Women, Infant, and Children Program. This is a supplemental nutrition program that helps to meet pregnant and breastfeeding moms, and then goes into infancy and children up through age 5. It provides nutritional counseling and support, and it also it's not a formula program. It gets a bad name, I think, without education on it. It is breastfeeding is primarily known as the best way to go, and but if that is not an option, then formula is that. And we're also very proud to have we have 7 certified lactation counselors who have specific education in how to assist, especially first-time breastfeeding moms, which is twice the number of certified lactation consultants as what the health system has. So some common WIC questions. First of all, those who are on SNAP do qualify for WIC, so that does not preclude them participating in our WIC programs. And the other thing is, people seem to think that if they're working, that they do not qualify for our programs, and that is not true. We love to coin the term the working eligible, because we know there are many people out there trying very hard, working very hard, but the paycheck just doesn't seem to cut it. Our immunization program, this is what most health departments are tagged for. We're very proud of our vaccine program, and we are the only DeKalb County federally funded Vaccine for Children program. And so we provide free vaccine for those who qualify. It is anyone who is on Medicaid automatically qualifies, and then there's some others like Native Americans and other types of populations, uninsured, that kind of thing, that we are able to and very happily serve so that they get their immunization needs met. All of our programs are evidence-based, and we're very outcome-driven because several of our programs are grant from federal or state grants programs. Of course, we have a lot of outcomes we need to show, so we are very evidence-based and outcome-driven. So serving the underserved. We are always trying to better understand the populations that we serve, and we're very proud of that because it helps us to drive what our practice is. So one example of this is that we have gone to pretty much all walk-in, not very many appointments. We have appointments for those who want them, but what we have come to understand is that the primary population that we serve cannot function on something called an appointment. They do not know how they're going to put food on the table the next day, let alone be able to make sure they get to an appointment 2 weeks from now. It very well might be that the only time that they can show up at our facility is when the relationship with the neighbor that they have can give them a ride to the health department. We need to be able to respond to that. We cannot turn them away with that. And I will add to say that other health departments don't want to hear this out of us. They will not function that way. We're very proud of the model that we have established, trying to understand our population. We are very attuned to collaborations. The first one that I would like to highlight is our collaboration with DeKalb County Community Gardens. The first picture up there is a picture actually on our health campus. And I'll never forget the day that Dan and I talked about putting that one out there. And it's been very successful. And then the other picture there is that they bring produce in to our lobby so that we can have it there for our clients to be able to have one more touch point, one more access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Another collaboration that we're very proud of is in listening to the needs of our community in terms of dental services. There's a company from Rockford that comes to the schools by the name of Onsite Dental, and they come and they will do cleanings and they will do exams at the schools. But if there was more work to be done, such as restorative work, the clients they had to travel to Rockford to actually get those services. So in talking with Dr. Grinter, we established a collaboration in which they now come to the health department once a month, and they will see any of those clients that need the restorative work. So it reduces the barrier for them to get to Rockford then for those services. So we're very proud of that also. We also are the county's point for healthcare enrollment assistance, and this is established through funding through DeKalb County Mental Health Board, and this is a very important thing to be able to get our people access to healthcare, into healthcare coverage, so that they can have access to healthcare in our community. And finally, I'd say this for last, because of the relationship that we already have with Family Service Agency. I have been a member of the board of the Children's Advocacy Center for many years now, going back to my hospital days and continue to the health department. And for many years, we were very, very interested in, again, not having those families who were already traumatized by alleged child abuse to have to drive to Rockford to get their medical exam done, the forensic exam. So we finally were able to accomplish that, and we now have space at the health department so that those families don't have to be further traumatized by having to go to Rockford for their exams. So we're very proud of that. So I look forward to continue to collaborate and to be part of this grant. Thank you.
Again, I'm Mary Ann Coles from Kishwaukee College, and I'm the Director of Workforce.
Could you speak up, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. Mary Ann Coles from Kishwaukee College, Director of Workforce and Community Education. So the Illinois WorkNet Center is located at 650B Peace Road, and it is funded 100% through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, federal funds. And the center offers career services to job seekers as well as services to businesses. So we have a community resource center, and in the center we help people with resume, job search, mock interviews, workshops. And so what our plan is to do is to offer these workshops at the University Village so that they can be offered on site. We will also be offering and doing a basic computer literacy class, and we do offer that in English and Spanish. We will as well be offering employment, recruitment, and job fairs at the center. So obviously the point of this collaboration is to be on site, but residents can come to the WorkNet Center as well. And the WorkNet Center is part of Kishwaukee College, so within our division, we have adult education program, that's the high school equivalency, or GED, as most people know, and ESL classes. So this would be an opportunity for us to as well offer those services on site there at the community center. And through adult education services and just the knowledge of the programs and services that we have at Kish, we would be offering information on our short-term training programs. Those are usually only a semester long, and at this point we have dental assisting, pharmacy tech, phlebotomy tech, and vet tech. We're working on sterile processing right now. And then, of course, with those short-term trainings, we have career technologies programs. I won't get into all of them, as well as health and education, but we have 26 degrees and 42 certificates. So we would be available through our WorkNet Center staff to give them information about programs and services that Kishwaukee College has, as well as the WorkNet Center employment and business services. So, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. You guys heard from a number of organizations tonight. I just want to point out that this is not all-inclusive. These are the organizations that we've brought to the table thus far, but providing case management opens up the door for all of the services throughout DeKalb County, and that's the role of the case manager, would be to connect these residents to any and all services that they need within the county and see them from beginning to end of those services. So not just a matter of giving them a telephone number and saying, give this person a call, or here's a referral, here's what you need to do. We'll walk them through the process. We'll follow up with them. We'll make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing in order to receive the services that they need. So essentially, we're really out there to remove the barriers that are there.
So to go over the actual agreement and the way that that's been structured, we use the city's independent contractor agreement as a kind of a standard template, and if you go to Exhibit B, which is the scope of services, in addition to the outline of the role of the neighborhood case manager, FSA would also be acting as a fiscal agent. So the city is not, through having a single agreement, the city is now not responsible for the funding or directly to any of the partner agencies. The city would be invoiced by FSA quarterly, and then FSA would then pass on the funding to those agencies that are included and would be funded through this agreement. FSA would also act as a coordinator for the monthly meetings. So as a next step, if this agreement was to be passed this evening, we would start meeting on a monthly basis between all the partner agencies, as well as some agencies that are not included in the agreement but have stated interest in participating and providing on-site services to University Village. A new part to this agreement that I think is something that the city hasn't done in the past would be the requirement for all the agencies to participate in doing a baseline study. So collecting existing survey data through all of the data that they have between the multiple agencies that are providing different services, and then also establishing what are the missing pieces of information, where are the gaps in that baseline study, and then drafting a survey document that would then come back to the city for approval, and then they would conduct that the survey and put together a baseline report that would essentially set the outcomes then. So traditionally, the city has looked with the quarterly reporting, looking at the provision of services from a quantitative standpoint, and not necessarily looking at the long-term outcomes and how those services are impacting the residents of the community. And this is a kind of a fundamental shift where we would then be identifying what our desired outcomes are, and then on an annual basis, the annual report would look at the original baseline study and measure those outcomes and see where the improvements are happening and where adjustments can be made. I guess the annual reporting would also involve residents too. The University Village Tenants Association would be one of those agencies that would participate in those monthly and quarterly meetings, and then also in the baseline study and reviewing that trying to create a positive feedback loop. So you're hearing from the residents about what they think of the services and how they can improve those services over time. And then the rest of Exhibit A would be the role of all the other agencies that are involved in requiring them to participate in those monthly and quarterly meetings in the baseline study. And then Exhibit C is then the term of the contract. So this isn't an annual agreement. This is actually, the term of this contract is 3 years. $33,000, which is what this Security Properties $500,000 breaks down to over 15 years. It doesn't go a whole long ways, especially when you're dividing it up between multiple agencies. So we felt like being able to provide the flexibility over a 3-year term to front load some of those hard costs to get the programs off the ground and then wean them back it was something that needed to happen in order for this to be successful. And then, as I mentioned in the previous meeting presentation, one of the other reasons the FSA was chosen was their ability to potentially bill Medicaid for the case management services. So in the event that that is successful and they have enough clientele and billable hours, we could then potentially look at are there ways to reduce the funding that the city is providing out of the allotment from Social Security Properties, and either pull in new agencies or provide new services through the partner agencies and continue to grow. And the hope is that while this is a small amount of money, doing a collaboration like this and having partnerships is only going to help leverage outside funding and bringing in additional funders to the agencies and the partners. So at this time, I'd entertain any questions you have for me, or if any of our partner agencies, if you have questions specifically about their services.
Where does this align with our Annie Glidden North revitalization plan?
Well, actually, it fits in very well. I mean,
I know it fits in, but I mean, has there been
know,
communication so far?
Well, we haven't really had any discussions with the task force as related to this yet. But what I wanted to comment on was, you know, when we went through the process with University Village and for Security Properties to join it, this was an important piece of that puzzle.
Absolutely.
And for seeing it finally coming to where it's going to happen,
good,
I think is very good. And it goes right along with the Annie Glidden North Task Force and what we can do and begin to improve not just the physical facilities at University Village, but also the conditions and things that we can do for the residents.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just another piece of the puzzle, you know, along with the transportation and the facility repair and everything else that's going on.
That's great.
So, Jared, Justin, I do have one quick question.
Sure.
It says here, University Village and surrounding areas. You want to explain that? Because I thought the funding was just for the village.
No, from my understanding is when the agreement with Security Properties was passed, that it wouldn't specifically be for University Village. And while discussing this in the subcommittee that I'm the liaison to, which is the Community Services Subcommittee, we recognize that there's not a lot of apartment complexes in that neighborhood that could actually facilitate and have the meeting space where agencies could come in, or you could have an on-site case manager. Except for University Village. So the idea here is that while this is being funded through Security Properties, who's the owner of University Village, if a resident from AGN that's not a UV resident, they could come in and they're not going to be turned down for those services. So I think the hope is that this kind of acts as somewhat of a pilot, that if this is successful, we can look at ways that we could scale the concept into the remainder of the neighborhood if funding was made available.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Collaboration written all over it. Roll call.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Jason. Item number 8 on tonight's agenda, omnibus approval of Resolution 2018-037, authorizing a local public agency agreement for federal participation with the Illinois Department of Transportation for the appropriation of $332,645 in motor fuel tax funds for the local share of costs for improvements to the intersection of Annie Glidden Road and Fairview Drive, and Resolution 2018-038 for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code, appropriating an amount not to exceed $350,000 in motor fuel tax funds for improvements to the intersection of Annie Glidden Road and Fairview Drive. Motion.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Patrick, Didiana, you're going to make this, and I see Tim's there also, so.
Yes,
please.
thank you. Good evening, council. Tonight we request the omnibus approval of 2 items pertaining to the proposed improvements to the intersection of Annie Glidden Road and Fairview Drive. The first, as you stated in the title, is the authorization of a local public agency agreement for the appropriation of $332,645 in MFT funds, and the second part, the resolution under Illinois Highway Code to appropriate an amount not to exceed $350,000 in MFT funds to fund our local share. And the total estimated cost of this project is $1,131,860. The federal funding is capped at $799,215, with the city's local share as stated, the $332,000. To ensure the city receives the funding, the city must execute by resolution this local public agency agreement. The local public agency agreement is a standard IDOT agreement that ensures the city has appropriated the necessary funds and outlines the federal and state compliance provisions required to receive the federal funding. The second part of this omnibus request is the appropriation of the MFT dollars in an amount not to exceed the $350,000. This $350,000 in MFT funds also includes a 5% contingency, because the $332,645 is just an engineer's estimate. We won't know the actual price till the project comes back from bidding. The bid goes out on August 24th, so that's why we have that cushion there. Now, before I turn it over to you guys, to you, Mayor and Council, for discussion, I'm not sure if we need to make a motion, or at least I know we have to acknowledge that there is in the MFT resolution within your packet, the actual IDOT resolution, there is an error on it. It says $335,000 when it should say $350,000. With that being said, Dean, We
would request a motion to amend to that effect. And Patrick, can you address the reason for the request and the extra funding?
Sure. It's simply just a clerical error on my end.
I'm sorry. Just to clarify, we ordinarily, when we bring in an engineering project of this nature, incorporate a small cap over the anticipated project costs, so that if we get into the project and they discover they need extra gravel for underlayment, or they have a soft spot in the pavement, that we don't have to stop a major construction project and wait a couple weeks to come back to council. So we normally incorporate a small cushion on these projects, and that was the reason for the request to increase from the anticipated project cost to $350,000. That funding would not be spent unless it was required by nature of the virtue of the construction of the project.
So before we discuss anything, we need an amendment to this, right?
We would make that request, yes.
Okay, I'd like to make an amendment to use, what was the final number on that?
$350,000.
$350,000.
Second.
But that was what we read. That,
On the MFT, the IDOT MFT resolution, the final page of your packet, the error says $335,000. That's why we're acknowledging it and bringing the motion out.
any further discussion on the amendment? Roll call.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 yes.
Now we're voting on the
Yes, now we can actually take questions.
On the omnibus approval,
Yes.
right. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 yes.
Patrick, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Dean.
Item number 9, Resolution 2018-039, authorizing the city manager to submit a letter of intent to participate in a grant opportunity with the Illinois Board of Higher Education to fund 4 Northern Illinois University work-study interns between January 1, 2019 and June 30th, 2019, and commit to including $15,000 in the FY 2019 budget as matching funds. Motion?
Second. Make the motion.
You made the motion?
Second.
Second, okay. It's been moved and seconded. Chris Randall, our HR Director, will address this issue.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the city has been presented with the opportunity to participate in a grant with NIU and funded by the Illinois Board of Higher Education for internship for undergraduate students. And the program provides 50% matching of the wages for the interns for the grant period, which is July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, up to $15,000. If the city were to be awarded the grant, it would be distributed amongst 4 positions that will be working approximately 20 hours or 26 weeks, just depending on the student's availability. This is the same grant that the council authorized last year, and we were able to identify 3 very talented individuals that they're already been working in 3 departments right now. So this is a renewal of that grant. So the authorization that we are seeking from council today is to let us to commit for these funds in 2019. And why we are requesting now and not doing through the budget process is because if we want to participate in a grant, we have to submit by April this year. So the grant will be for January 1st through June to commit the $15,000, which is the matching, and the grant will fund the other $15,000. And if we were to participate on the remaining of 2019, then we have to do through the budget process, which will be then July 2019. So we are looking for authorization to let the city manager sign a letter of intent to commit these funds for January 1st through June 30th, 2019. And the copy of the letter of intent is in your packet.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Myself on the next one.
And Alderman Fagan is leaving. He is recusing himself from our next resolution, number 10, Resolution 2018-040, authorizing immediate payment of the incentive for 230 East Lincoln Highway, the Bandits Castle LLC. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Jason Mitchnick will address this issue.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you this evening with this resolution would be authorizing immediate payment for the incentive for 230 East Lincoln Highway. So at our last meeting, the agreement was amended to increase the incentive from 400 to 468 to 82. And then earlier this evening, the budget amendment was passed. Due to the timing of the second reading occurring at this meeting and waiver of second reading not occurring at the past meeting, prevented the check request for this incentive to be included on accounts payable this evening. And also with the budget amendment being required prior to this, this is a procedural resolution that would allow us to cut a check to the Bandits Castle for the incentive, which is a request of Mr. Barnes, who would like to close out his construction loan as soon as possible. He has incurred quite a bit more interest than he anticipated, and this would allow us to issue him a check by the end of the month, which would allow him to roll into his permanent financing. So there is a business cost to going through the standard procedure. It would could potentially be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks that the check would be issued if we were to go through the standard procedure of having it approved and going on to accounts payable. So this is a request from Mr. Barnes, and the staff is recommending approval of this resolution so that we can close out the agreement and provide the incentive.
Any further discussion on this? Roll call.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeck?
No.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
6 yes.
Thank you. Now we go to new and unfinished business. Refuse, recyclables, and yard waste contract. A discussion on that, and the survey discussion. This is not a item that requires any motion at this point. So I'm going to ask Public Works Director Tim Alderman to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We're here this evening to share with you the results of our refuse survey. And this is an outline of what we'll do tonight. We'll present those results, talk a little bit about our recommendations, and then we would like to have a discussion about next steps and how we might want to craft our RFP for collection services. We will then kind of shift gears and we'll talk about an unsolicited proposal that we received from Waste Management. And at the conclusion of that, we'll talk about RFP versus other options and where council would like to go. So as you know, we presented our ideas for doing a survey in January. The purpose of that survey was to garner an understanding of residents' collection services preferences. We developed a survey which had 11 questions. 3 of those questions had follow-up questions, and we went about promoting the survey through various media outlets. The survey was done online, and as well as 1,000 random surveys were sent out. We have about 9,000 customers. About 1 out of 9 received the surveys, and then we also had 10 surveys filled out by people who walked up and got them from City Hall desk. And it was open for about 30 days. The survey responses are shown in this slide. We've broken out the survey responses between homeowners and tenants. That was the first question, are you a homeowner or a tenant? And you see that about 90% of the survey respondents were homeowners. The second graph there shows the number of occupants in the home. The online survey had about 50% in the 1 to 2 occupants, whereas the random sample had about 70% in that range. So that might indicate that the online survey was a little bit larger, more family, whereas the random was more of a single couple. And then the last portion there is just the tenants part. So we had 575 total responses. About 335 of those were from online and 240 from the walk-ups, the 10 walk-ups plus 230 from the random sample. So of the 1,000 samples we sent out, we got 230 back. So we think this is a pretty good representation of the community. So we'd like to just go through a few of these. And the format was to provide a little bit of background information and then make a statement and ask if they disagree or agree in 5 different gradations. So the question number 3 was, should the city explore giving residents an option to use a smaller container, like a 32 or 64 versus the 96, for a lower fee, for example, $1 to $2 less per month? And as we see from the results, strongly agree and agree represents about 65% of the total respondents. So pretty strong in favor of that. We asked if we could decrease the monthly rate for single-family residents, for example, $2, by removing the allowance of an unlimited number of resident supply containers. So our current service, you can put out as many 32-gallon, 50-pound containers as you want. It's unlimited. So we asked if we could lower your rate and limit that to a particular number, would you be in favor of that? And you can see here there was no strong in favor or in disagreement of that. The next question was to decrease the monthly rate for single-family residential homes, the city should remove the allowance of an a limited amount of yard waste that can be placed at the curb. And here you see a strong disagreement. So people want to be able to put as many bags of yard waste to be collected as they wish. Number 6 was to decrease the monthly rate, for example, by $1, should the city eliminate the citywide yard waste containers. You recall we have 3 locations where we take yard waste. Strongly disagreed, almost 50%, and then another 27% disagreed. Our residents value that service. Question number 7 was to decrease the monthly rate, the city should remove the allowance of bulk items such as furniture and appliances. And then we add there that it would be a sticker program that might be $10 to $25. That's kind of the range that we see. And again, people strongly disagree and disagree at high numbers. So even the bulk items, which you might think that people would want to give up, they really value that service. And then the last one, number 8 here, the monthly rate for the service should include the household hazardous waste collection such as paints, automotive products, so on and so forth, for $1.25 per month. And that's the general price that we've seen and from Waste Management, quoted from Waste Management. And we see that there's a little bit of a trend towards agreeing to that, but not very strong. And we asked a follow-up question to that, and that was, it was $1.25 and you had to do it. So there's a little bit of in favor of that. But when we made it an option, okay, it might go up a little bit, like the $3, even $5, but if it was optional, would that be something you're in favor with? And 50% said yes, it would be in favor of that service being optional. Number 9 had to do with the composting, and at $5 per month, people are really not seeing a great value in composting. Are you willing to pay an additional $5? And no is pretty strong in that. And then in number 10, we asked, or we stated, the city should use any savings realized in the new refuse recycling and yard waste collection contract to fund neighborhood street repairs. And we had agreements and strong agree in high numbers. And so that was a significant finding that we heard people saying, if you can save money in your refuse collection contract, we would be willing to have that dedicated to street repairs. So we're very pleased with the results of the project, or of the survey, and think they're quite meaningful as we look forward. This is a slide that kind of just summarizes the main points that we just went through. So on the left-hand side are the question or statements, if you will, in a general description, and then we show strongly disagree to strongly agree. And what we've done here is to put the bold numbers, anything greater than 25% is shown in bold, and 16 to 24% is regular font, and then the light is less than 15. So you can really pick up what the trends are. In the tiered service, people really like that. In the elimination of the extra cans, pretty much no favoritism in that. And the next 3 were all negatives in terms of limiting the service. for yard waste, the citywide yard waste and the bulk items. The household hazardous waste, a mild approval of that, and then using for street repair, pretty strong on that. So when we take these results and think about where we would go from here, trying to incorporate our residents' preferences for services, we would definitely recommend that we add a tiered service component to our RFP. We would definitely recommend a spring cleanup, because if you have a 32, 64, 96, the 32 and 64 are not going to be able to set out extra cans. So if there was the accumulation of trash throughout the year because they couldn't use those extra cans, you want to give it kind of an amnesty once or twice a year. And that's pretty common in waste collection. Keep the unlimited curbside yard waste and bulk items. We heard that real clear. The citywide containers are a problem. They cost the city a lot in terms of maintaining those. They're open 24/7 and they're being abused. And then on Monday morning after the weekend, after contractors have come in and thrown their stuff in there, then our staff has to come in on Monday morning and sort out through all that debris. And so there's a lot of extra time and effort being spent on those. And if you think about it, there's 3 locations, and Community Gardens, 7th and Oak, and then 1100 block of 7th Street. I mean, that seems like we could do a little limiting of that, maybe 1 or 2 sites, and we could still provide the service, but limit it. So our recommendation is that we do limit that drop-off. And in the household hazardous waste collection, definitely think there's an interest in that. And then dedicating the savings to road repairs. And so with those ideas kind of on the table, we'd like to hear from you all about what you think about this survey, what you think about the preferences that we heard our residents talking about, and how we might be able to respond to those preferences in our RFP.
Alderman Orrego.
Tim, I think it was very useful to provide a survey for residents. I question whether some of those options, if there really is a strong, preference, because the dollar amount involved, well, of course I'm going to say, I like this service if my bill would only change by $1 or $2. I mean, when you start talking about $5 or something maybe, but $1 or $2, sure, put it in, I'd like that. Also, I had a resident raise a question about where the paper surveys were available at City Hall. Do you know?
Yeah, they were available at the front desk.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but did you have to ask for them, or were they actually just out?
I believe that you had to ask for them.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Fanouken.
Thank you. Tim, one of the things I don't see mentioned there is electronic waste. I know that Sycamore has a program now where, waste can be picked up curbside there. I think that's at least something that we should include in the RFP, at least as an option, and see what that might cost compared to the monthly pickup we have now that's, at a certain time, and then it's only good till the truck fills up.
Right. And I would add, Alderman Fanouken, I apologize, the household hazardous waste would include electronics.
Okay.
Yes. That includes the electronics.
Thank you.
Alderman Fagan.
What other towns are doing for these? We've got the 3 locations for the landscape, and I know it's being abused. What are other towns doing to get away from that?
We have not gone to neighborhoods and see what our neighbors are doing. I think in general, my understanding from talking to the vendors is that it is a unique service that we're providing to our residents.
Okay, and what about, excuse me, the spring cleaning, twice a year, spring and fall? I know they used to do that years ago, but, I mean, would there be limitations on that? I mean, we've seen times before with kids moving out to the college, and next thing you know, you got an entire house that's household that's sitting out in front of the curb. We've seen it many times, but, don't want to bite off more than we can chew.
Right.
But sometimes it didn't last long.
No.
And that's effectively what we're doing now. We don't have, well, on the bulk and the white items, we have a limit of 2 per week, I believe it is. But, I mean, you could take them out there, 1 or 2 a week and get the same thing picked up.
Okay.
But yeah, we would have to work with our vendors to understand exactly what their threshold could be in terms of that service.
Alderman Favor.
So it was a great survey. I just want to say that. I think question number 4 negates question number 3. Number 3 is if I could have a smaller container, I could pay less money. But then in question 4, you took away the ability to put as many, like, if you get Christmas time, you're going to have a bunch of boxes for recycling or something like that. You take that away in question number 4. So to me, it's like question number 4 kind of negated the savings. I personally have requested smaller containers so they fit in the garage easier, they're easier to move around. But then there's that every 3 months where, right, there's some holiday or something where there just seems to be extra trash.
So the question 4 was really leading towards the idea of a sticker program, where you would have a limited number of cans. And those who agreed to that, we asked them how many cans, and most said 1 to 2. So most thought that if you limited it to 1 or 2, that would be a reasonable program, and then stickers beyond that. So we kind of got that feel, but it was not anywhere near as popular or as positive as the tiered system.
One more question then. Do we currently have white goods or bulk item pickup today, or is that, I didn't think that was.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And
we do today.
It's limited to 2 per week. Yeah. I know.
Got all this stuff piling up in the basement. Just kidding.
Tim, I understand we have another
Yes.
interesting item in your agenda.
Yeah. So we did receive an unsolicited proposal from Waste Management, and we wanted to present that to you this evening. And it is included in your packet for detail, but I want to go over some of the items. It begins with the proposed value-added services, and some of these are added and some are taken away. So at your door, which is the household hazardous waste and electronics collection, where you call in and get the bag delivered, and then you put your items in it, and then they come and they take it away for you. That is being added in their proposal at no charge. So what we previously received, the pricing, an estimate of $1.25 per month, is now being included in this proposal. The Waste Watch, which is training drivers to be able to notify a central city number or text or email if they see something suspicious in the neighborhood. Okay? That's a part of our current offering, but we've never implemented it, but that would be offered going forward at no charge. Expand the compost and food scrap collection, and that could be done optionally for $3 a month. We had originally talked about $5 in the survey, and they've come back with that being an option, so that you could sign up for that service, and we would roll it out through different portions of town. So it wouldn't be something that we would do across the board, but it would be a little bit slower rollout, but that could be done at $3 a month. Lamp and battery tracker, where there are disposal mechanisms for city locations for our batteries and our lamps. Dispose of up to 250 tons of natural disaster debris if we ever had that need. Now, here is where they're proposing to take away the 3 yard waste locations, the citywide locations, and instead add the drop-off location at the landfill. And add that for Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Okay, so that's added back in. And then take out the recycle bank. That's a program that's not being used very much. It's kind of a new program called Recycle Right, Recycle Often, and that kind of takes the place of that. So that's the base level proposal in terms of services, if you will. And if we were to go with our current unlimited volume service, remember I said you put out as many cans as you want. If we went with that service, that's the option 1, we could actually reduce costs by $1.13 per month in the first year of the contract that they're proposing. And then it would go to the 2.5%, which we're currently under for years 2 through 5. They've also given an option where we can modify that with a second yard waste drop-off location. That's at their location in Simmons Avenue, and you could have that on Saturday morning from 8 to 12. So that would help for the weekend. And that adds an additional 68 cents per month on to that bill. So if you do the math, the 68 cents for 9,000 customers, 12 months a year, that's about $73,000. So that's how much they're telling us it costs just to have a location available. So if you think about 3 locations, 24 hours a day, there's a lot of cost in that is being conveyed to our residents within their rate. Okay, so that was the unlimited volume. That's currently what we have. Now they're talking about a different option here where they have a modified. This is incorporating now the tiered cost, or the tiered service, where you could do a 96-gallon unlimited service for $18.85 per month. And those other options, this wouldn't include the second option for the yard waste. It would just include the landfill. That option comes in option number 3, where they add back in that second location. But in option number 2, it's modified. So you have a 96, you pay $18.85, which is 53 cents less than what we're paying now, and you get the same service, except that you're going to lose your city-wide yard waste locations. Then you could also do a 64 or 32, but these smaller totes would have limited, you wouldn't be able to set out an unlimited number of extra cans, okay? But you could save $1, $2. So you're talking, $2.50 a month now for a small can, and not having the city-wide drop-off services. And then in the option number 3, they add back in at 68 cents additional to the 3 modified volume rates, and they add back in that second location. That second location being the Simmons from 8 to noon on Saturday. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry,
What?
Mayor.
Oh, Alderman Orico.
So, would I still be able to put out my unlimited yard waste under option 2? Would I have to have the 96-gallon unlimited to put out unlimited yard waste?
I believe the yard waste is included. The yard waste, the bulk items, and the whites are still included.
So whichever option, I can still put out all my bags?
Yes.
Okay. My concerns are addressed.
Alderman Fagan.
What about the recycle? It's just the gallons of garbage, but there's nothing on there on the recycling.
Correct. Does that include the 96-gallon as we have now? Yeah, so the 96-gallon as we have now would be the recycling.
So you'd have 2 containers?
Yes, as we do now.
As we do now. Alderman Fanouken?
Tim, I thought there were different sized recycling containers now.
Yeah.
Yes, there are.
Okay, so those options would remain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the only difference is, and you can get a smaller refuse container, but you pay the same amount.
Right.
Currently. With this proposal, you would actually save, you would pay $1 less.
So if we had residents who opted to save some money, with that savings, that would be translated into the road, the additional road, the potential for road, for utilization.
We could, I mean, that
would be up to us.
We've heard
I
our
understand.
residents. I think
understand.
that, looking at the numbers in general, I think we're talking about $100,000 or so a year, if we wanted to take that savings and put it back into the street program.
I understand. Alderman Favorite.
So just to be clear, I guess, on, like, let's go with option number 2. And if I had the 64-gallon limited, you said we were potentially thinking of 2 extra cans, or you'd have to buy stickers to put out extra cans?
Yes, would be a sticker
So it
program.
would be sticker, okay.
But we could also have that one-time spring clean, that kind of amnesty day, where if you had some that you had collected, you could put it out.
And what were the stickers per can, you thought?
I think we're talking about $2 or $3 range. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alderman Fanouken?
Tim, not to, not to slight you, in the least, the folks from Waste Management, but Tim, I thought there was another refuge company that was interested too. And I think, Waste Management has done a great job of providing services to communities as long as I can remember. But, would it be in the city's best interest to go ahead and do the RFP and see if there is competition that maybe could drive these costs down even further?
Well, isn't that your suggestion in this?
Yes.
I mean,
And
your
we
suggestion
have
was-
4 options given to us tonight. We can choose to move forward with an RFP based on the survey data and the council input. We can direct staff to work towards extending the current contract with Waste Management as provided for in the contract for 2 years with an annual increase of 2.5%. Council can direct staff to work toward a contract with Waste Management based on one of the options in the proposal, or council can direct staff to request another option from Waste Management. The recommendation from staff is to recommend the council to proceed with the RFP based on the survey data and council input. And that's what you are suggesting.
That is what I am suggesting. That just comes out of my long background being on campus and going out to bid. So.
Right.
You make a motion.
And I would add that there is some pretty good
It's not an
reading.
action item.
Oh, that's right.
There is some pretty good reading in the comments to the survey. So a lot of respondents were singing the praises of Waste Management. So and that's my recommendation has nothing to do with the level of service we're receiving.
Absolutely.
It really has to do with believing in the process to get the best overall deal for the city and its residents to go to the competitive market.
Does there seem to be consensus that we proceed with the RFP based on the survey data and the input that we've given tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're not going to vote on that. This is not a discussion, this is a discussion item.
Yes.
So thank you, Tim.
Yeah, so Mayor, we have the RFP queued up.
Okay.
And we were anticipating this. So we'll be working diligently to bring it forward on April 9th for consideration. So you'll see that in your packet. We're going to incorporate the ideas that we presented tonight into that RFP, and we'll be bringing that forward for council's consideration in 2 weeks.
You anticipated what this council was going to do?
At risk.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Tim. Okay, number 2 under new and unfinished business, FY 2019 budget workshop presentations. Again, this is a discussion item, no action to be taken. Finance Director Molly Talkington.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is really to address Alderman had put in a request back at the beginning of March, requesting more line item detail for the FY18 budget. We came back with some options at the March 12th, or came back with feedback at the March 12th council meeting, and then met again on the budget workshop on March 20th. That was delayed. Discussion on line item presentations till tonight. So what you have before you are the 4 options that were put together for that March 20th budget workshop. The first option, it was your attachment A. That's really looking strictly at the line item, no other information, but it does have some historical actual information, the prior year budget and the current year budget to look at. That's by department and by fund. The second one, attachment B, was more to address the questions that were raised about trending. This is your 5-year financial forecast. This one, if not chosen tonight as how we want to look at the line items, you will still be seeing this presentation but updated for the FY19 budget later, early summer, so it'll be in July for you to look at that one. Attachment 3 was trying to kind of meet in the middle between an overview and a more detailed line item presentation. So it broke down underneath each account number, kind of categories of what was budgeted within those line items. And then attachment 4 is a detailed budget presentation in which staff uses when they're putting together the budget in the budget module of our current software system. The report you have, there's kind of some caveats on this one, contains multiple columns, but the first 2 columns are say actual data, they're all zeros. It's because the budget module doesn't actually contain the actual data that's stored in our general ledger. So those are just essentially columns for you to skip over. It doesn't have the accurate information for you to look at. The next 3 columns are in reference to the FY17 budget. That was current as of July of 2017. So that data isn't the most up-to-date on that spreadsheet. But what is valuable on that spreadsheet is the last column, the FY18 column, and all the kind of detailed information you see written out underneath an account number really reflects what's in that FY18 column, and that's what we're looking at. So that's your 4th presentation. So for tonight, what I'm really looking for is feedback on which one of those options council would like to see going forward, and we can bring those back to you at budget workshops that we have upcoming in these next few months. But to also then realize this is kind of a new or added part of the budget workshops, that we would take that service presentation by the departments and really keep it to 10 minutes and under, so then we can dive into whichever line item presentation that council would like to see. So I just need feedback on which line item presentation you want, and if you're comfortable with doing kind of the abbreviated service presentations.
Alderman Fagan.
Well, I'm the one that brought this out for the, yes, and that's why we're here at 28 after. Anyway, you know, the last line item where you work off of is what we were talking about. And I'm not talking about us going from line item to line item on this, but this is something we can take and we can look at these raw numbers, and this is what the staff looks at, not what is out of notes. So we can actually see the numbers where when we get into a situation of what can we cut back on, we're actually seeing everything here rather than notes.
So you're looking at D then?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be the fourth that they added on before they had the 1, 2, and 3. Now this is the 4. And I by no means want to go through and count papers and pencils here. What I'm just saying is, when we look at this and we've got a department that's coming ahead of us and we're looking at it, we can actually break this down. And, you know, we can go over it, and this is homework, and then bring up any items that jump out at us.
Alderman Noriko.
I found A the most useful because it, gave me the opportunity to get some historical perspective. In terms of D, actually looking at, real expenses. I understand, the value of that. We see that every 2 weeks when we see the accounts payable summary.
Well, they're being spent.
Yes. But if we've, and I think it's incumbent on all of us, if we get that before, the approval. So, yes, it has already, been spent, but if you're looking at D and it's showing, budget year to date, those dollars have already been spent.
Well, it does show actuals versus budgeted items.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And what I'm just saying is, what you're looking at it from A, and you're looking at D, you're looking at a more of a breakdown. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want to be come back and have somebody come back and say, okay, well, cut the budget, and they come back and say, we're going to cut this with the things that happened last year, which I don't want to tolerate again. I mean, I don't want to cut out some of the stuff that they did. I'm talking about raw numbers that we're looking at that we can actually see.
So what you're agreeing with Kate on that?
No.
No, I'm
You are
saying
not.
D.
You want, okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Alderman Fanouken.
I also would prefer to see D. I mean, A is what we've already been getting, and we are looking for more detail, and D
Right,
provides a
okay, I
lot
see.
more detail than A does. A is what we've been seeing already. A and B basically are what we've been seeing already, and that's why I think D provides so much more detail, and it does give you the historical perspective of this year as we do the budget going for next year, and I think that's really what Pat is looking for and what others of us have looked for before.
Good. Would you be comfortable with that, Kate? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I expressed an opinion I don't expect to,
Yeah, okay.
always be agreed with.
The budget workshops are so important, though. It's nice to have some consensus going forward that we're all going to work from
Yeah,
that
you will
same.
have- you
from
will
that
have
same-
consensus.
Yeah, right, okay. Alderman Jacobson?
First off, I have asked for this for 8 years. Thank you for finally being the one to get it done. I mean, this is awesome. Do I pretend that in the last 4 days I've gotten through all of it? No, I have not yet. Again, I think there's merit in all of them. It's basically how in-depth you want to get into it and how much you want to work the numbers and play with the numbers and knead the Play-Doh and all those things. Well, I appreciate, again, a lot of these documents, I would imagine, are basically just different ways of flowing the same information. I mean, how difficult was it to do all of these at this point for last year?
Well, I would say it was very difficult to do all of them with our current software.
Correct.
So, like the very first presentation, the 2 actual columns, we had to manually go through and type them in because we can't produce that report. But because you guys were amazing in improving a new financial software, we're going down that path this year to implement it. And I want budget to be one of the first things we look at, because my intention is we have kickoff next month to talk about how we can do the budget in the new software, and then hopefully getting you guys reports will be a lot more flexible and easier to produce the information you're looking for out of that system, because these are very kind of labor intensive. And attachment D, it's a snapshot. You know, if I accidentally delete that PDF, we're going to have to go look for someone who has it in their email, because I can't reproduce that report. So we have it, and I've emailed it to some people, so right now we have some backups of it. But I really think going forward in the new software system, and then getting the feedback from these budget workshops and how you guys ask questions about the line items and what you're really looking for as we go through these workshops, will help me better tailor a report for you to see for the 19 budget.
Is there a consensus then that B looks good, Alderman Markwart?
Yeah, it's a combination of A and D, so you have the historical part.
Again, I think D is important.
And D does the...
What's that, David?
I think, again, in reality, the question I was asking Molly was, I think all of this data should be provided to the council in reality. Again, to understand the actuals today, to understand the futures, to understand if you want to get down into that line item understanding. Do I believe all council members are going to go through all 1,000 pages of a budget book every year? Probably not, but especially for new aldermen coming in and for those that want to get into that level of understanding, I believe all of them are important in reality. The presentation obviously will be very different of how we get through that. Again, I think A, B, and D are all important parts of the presentation. But as far as details and understanding of the numbers, all of these documents are important. And they are this is a major homework assignment. This is set down and print them out and be able to use your flow charts. Again, do I believe all aldermen will have the time and energy to do that? No. But there will likely be several of us that do want that level of information. And if we have questions, we can bring them back to you as our finance director to help us plod through it. So again, I truly believe now finally seeing it, it can be done, even though I've been told that by past finance directors it may not have been able to have been. It can be done, and we can see it, and we can feel it, we can touch it and play with it at this point. I would love to see, again, for those that want the information to take it, for those that want something higher level or something that's easier to digest in smaller format, if it's a possibility, I'd say I want the whole buffet. I don't want just the steak.
So
you did use the word awesome, Dave.
Awesome.
You have not said that in a long time. Any further comment?
Actually, Mayor, I do have a comment. So I think from what I'm hearing, there's kind of a combination we can do. One, because attachment A is actually in the adopted budget book that's online in a PDF, so you can look at that for any department or fund that you want to. So that was already available, we do that in the budget book. B, attachment B, while I don't have it updated right now, that's what we're working on, so you will see it updated in July. It just takes me a little bit of time to get through and do all that trending and get more data. So you will have that, you just don't have it right now. And then C, I don't think you actually need that one because you get more information in D, because C was kind of the hybrid. So we will bring D back, from what I'm hearing, to the budget workshops along with the service presentations. And lastly, I did have another attachment E. That's more of a informational attachment. It's also in the budget book, but it tells you exactly what is in each account number. So if you're unsure of what would be in there, that gives you the definitions. So I think for the most part, attachments A, B, D, and E, you will see at some point in time going forward. We'll just kind of scrap C going with this process.
I know it's always dangerous territory to try to reiterate what I think Dave Jacobson said, but I really do think this is more information than we have certainly seen and perhaps other councils have seen in the past, and so we're headed in the right direction.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
Okay, our last item, reports, communications from each of our aldermen. Alderman Jacobson.
I know I had something to say 4.5 hours ago that I missed for the England Task Force report that Joellen and I talked about earlier. So I'll give it to Joellen and her report because I
Okay.
don't remember exactly.
I think I covered it.
Okay, sweet.
Alderman Fanouken.
No further report tonight, thank you.
Alderman Markwart.
No report.
Alderman Fagan.
No report.
Alderman Noriko.
I just wanted to thank staff. We've had several examples of really proactive programming with the Compass program, for example. And I think it's a wonderful example of collaboration, being proactive, plus the social services funding for University Village. And I just look forward to seeing more opportunities like this brought forward.
Alderman Verbeek.
No report.
Alderman Favor.
No report.
I do have a statement. To reiterate my statement issued as a press release last late Friday afternoon, Anne Marie Gora served the city of DeKalb as its city manager for over 4 years and dedicated significant time and effort to her duties. Her service is greatly appreciated. The city wishes her success in her future endeavors. End quote. Prior to that press release, I convened our department heads to inform them. They in turn took great strides to inform our city employees. That was done out of respect for them, and it was the proper thing to do. Shortly before the first tip-off of the NCAA basketball Friday night, I received several phone calls from media. I thank our local press, most notably Drew Zimmerman of the Daily Chronicle and Scott Zach of WLBK, who honored my stance that I could have no further comment. As good journalists, they did glean further information from public documents and presented their news reports that evening and during the weekend. The process to start and to select a new city manager will begin immediately. As your mayor, I pledge this process to be open and transparent. We will engage many components and solicit many ideas. The citizens of DeKalb will be involved in a variety of ways. I would encourage the public to reach out to this city council, to these individual aldermen over the coming weeks with your thoughts. In the interim, I have asked Assistant City Manager Patty Hoppenstedt to step in and lead our staff. As our acting city manager, I fully expect Patty's background and her working knowledge of City Hall to serve us well as we embark on the search process for a new city manager. Thank you. Sue Herman?
Thanks, Mayor. I did have one thing that I wanted to ask for department heads. If you guys know that you're going to have somebody providing a presentation, if you could give me their names just so that I can make sure that they're accurately depicted in the minutes, either ahead of time or like following the meeting, that would be super helpful. That's all. Thanks.
Were you looking at Jason then?
No, not necessarily. I was trying to make eye contact with everyone
No, I
prepared.
understand. I understand.
Thanks.
City Attorney Frieders.
No report.
Acting City Manager Patty Hoppenstedt.
Mayor and City Council, I vow my dedication and continued commitment to the City of DeKalb during this interim period, and I look forward to serving in the capacity that you have requested me to do so. And I welcome input and feedback, as I too believe in a open and transparent process. So thank you for the opportunity.
Deputy Police Chief John Petrogallo.
No report.
Molly Talkington, our Finance Director.
I'd just like to reiterate what one of our residents said today, All the Queen's Horses is actually a very good movie. I've seen it, informative, but don't be late. It starts right away. It's about an hour long, but it's worthwhile to go see.
Eric Hicks, our fire chief.
No report.
Joe Ellen Charlton, Community Development.
Just real quickly, the combined Sycamore DeKalb Expo is this Thursday afternoon. It's at the DeKalb High School this year. They switch off between Sycamore and DeKalb High Schools every year, and it's at DeKalb. We will be there as a city. We'll have our economic development booth set up, and all of the departments are providing information and encouraged to take turns coming to the event and sharing data with our citizens. The event happens from 3 to 4 is the business-to-business portion of the meeting, and the general public is invited to be there from 4 to 7. Thank you.
Tim Holderman, our Public Works Director.
No report.
Chris Randall, our HR Director.
No report.
Any other items for the good of the cause? There will be no executive session this evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.